Microphone, Ed.
I'll call this meeting in order. I'm Ed Grolleman, the Vice President of the Board. I'm replacing John Orr this month, who's on a well-deserved vacation, and I'll overseas. Otherwise, he would be joining us via Zoom or that. But we do have Mike on Zoom, and we do have a quorum today. So with that, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Moved by Marty and seconded by Mike. Okay, any comments?
I caught one typo under the Kahiti Fence Advisory Committee and a different word, and I've given that to Karen. It's not substantial.
Okay, so then I will call for a vote to approve the minutes. Okay.
I approve.
Okay, 6-0. Okay. Okay, so the next meeting are my opening remarks, and are basically going to be pretty short. As you see, we've changed the agenda a little bit. The open forum is going to be just for everything except the main pump station. We will be taking comments after that when we go for the capital requests. We really want everybody to see the full presentation before they comment on it, so that we can have all the details and all the facts out there. The other thing on the agenda, we've removed the long-range planning report today because we feel like we're going to have a lot of comments and time, so we want to be people to express their opinions to the board on this, and that'll be moved to the next board meeting next month. Okay, and with that, I'm going to open this next open forum. I'm going to ask everybody, please adhere to the 3 minutes, and remember, this is for anything other than the main pump station project. Thank you.
Microphone, please.
How's that? Good. Gary Zika, Chota. I want to talk about the elevated water tank that's upcoming. This is a major item that the board will be addressing, or should I say, getting ourselves in a rush to spend more monies without fixing the problems. Another ready, shoot name. Here comes an elevated water tank. No doubt the POA water system has some issues with water volume, pressure, and aged water. Steve, you stated at one of the meetings with Jacobs to get the questions that I've been asking for a year and a half, to get them to Jacobs and get them answered. After that meeting, I got the questions to Matt, and I later learned that those questions that Matt thought were my questions were some of my monthly PSAC meeting questions that he was going to send to Jacobs. So no, Jacobs hasn't gotten all the answer or all the questions that I've asked, and nor have they answered them. So it's very important that these questions that have not been asked at Jacobs, let alone answered, do get asked and answered. This leads us to Scott McCrae's statements, presentations, and answers to questions on water and sewer issues. And I guess I'm not talking about the main lift station, just in general. This is not a personal attack on Scott, but just to point out to the board and the POA some of the facts about the issues that Scott is pertaining to be knowledgeable. Scott's expertise is in computer software applications, not sewer and water. For instance, at the last PSAC meeting, Scott stated that the POA tested all fire hydrants in Tellico Village. Well, what Scott was referring to was the contractor that had been testing to hire to flush the water lines and test for chlorine content. Marty, you were at that meeting. Is that what you understood it to be? Because it was not TDAC hydrant testing. That's what he led us to believe, but they're not. Another example, Scott had set up water meters at Kahiti. Results to date, inclusive. Why? Scott did not do simple QA/QC. If he understood the work, he would have checked the tasked meter readings for both the water coming in and the sewer going out. These are known facts. The POA has all that information. On dry weather days, it's apparent that the meters installed by Scott are reading by a magnitude higher than what is coming in and going out of Kahiti. The meters he set up are not set up correctly, and he does not know what to do. Another example is about the water storage requirements that's required by TDAC. Scott stated that we could not rely on LUB and tasks for water storage. The requirements for TDAC can be met by both suppliers. This was stated in a 2018 letter to TDAC and again in June of this year It was discussed with TDAC during an audit. TDAC allows supplier storage to be counted for the regulated storage requirements.
Please finish up your 3 minutes, Rob.
I will.
Get back to line.
TDAC allows enough storage to be counted for regulated storage. We have paid LUB storage for the Watts Cemetery Road. In regards to having storage in the village, it's not a problem. We have a design issue with our system and not a design that was not designed for irrigation systems. One would need multiple tanks throughout the village to overcome the irrigation use for peak water in the mornings.
Please move to the back line and finish up, so the other people can make their comments.
Okay.
Thank you.
Gary, I guess I just have one question / comment. I mean, you addressed a lot of your comments towards Scott, but I guess I'm wondering too if a lot of those things should be addressed through PSAC, right? Because those are where the other engineers are, and we as a board rely on what PSAC recommends. So I hate to just pin it all on Scott, I guess is where I'm going here, and that he's working,
If you let me finish
In
this, I'll
conjunction.
explain the rest of it.
but in
Well-
conjunction with PSAC, which is, we've said that before too.
Yep.
Yeah, you want me to finish it, or I'll get to the back line, I'll finish it then.
I guess to play by the rules, you'll have to get
back line. Thank you, sir. Please state your name.
Ron Hansen. For over 30 years now, property owners in Tellico Village have enjoyed the protection of the covenants between us, which prohibited the board from incurring large financial obligations without soliciting and receiving the support of a majority of villagers via special assessments. That protection has been erased, and it happened on July the 17th of 2024. When you decided to spend an extra $7 million to rebuild Tanasi bigger and better, did you solicit and receive the support of a majority of villagers? You did not. When you imposed an $80, what was really a water surtax, and even charged it retroactively to properties which were not connected to water or sewer, did you solicit and receive the support of a majority of villagers? You did not. When you approached the Tennessee legislature and tried to get them to change the law so that it would enable you to impose a levy, a $5,000 real estate transaction tax, did you solicit and receive the support of a majority of villagers? You did not. And now it is your stated intention to raise water rates by 10% annually over the next 5 years, and golf rates by 3%. Mr. Inkrot, in a recent meeting, said, "We're all in this together." Apparently not. Those of us who use water are in it for 300% more than those of us who play golf. So whom really do you represent? Is it the whole village, or is it only a subset, a particular subset of that village? At the June town hall, I asked board members if they thought it was important to consider the opinions of their constituents. It was a simple question, and Mr. Lackey and Mr. Reed answered me with a simple yes. They gave me the courtesy of a response. I thank you. Mr. Orr spoke about being a volunteer as if that cloaked the board's decisions in virtue. And Mr. Braddock reminded me that I was on the clock and implied I was wasting my time with that question. Neither of them answered a question, but I believe it's an important question which deserves an answer from every current and future board member. You have and you will answer that question with your actions much more clearly than your words.
Thank you very much for your comments.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is the first time, my name is Bob Wolf, and it's the first time that I've had the privilege of addressing the board, and I want to thank you for your service. because the pay's not too great, the benefits aren't too great, but you're volunteering and trying to make our community better. Thank you. The reason I'm here today is to urge you to reconsider a position. If we all thought together, it'd be boring. And that is that please reconsider welcoming the Tennessee Utility Commission oversight of Tellico Village's water and sewer system. Before I mention all the benefits of doing this, let me mention my background. I've worked with regulated electric and natural gas utilities for most of my career, serving most of the utilities in Canada, Chicago, New York, Milwaukee, you name it, including Loudoun Utilities. I've even educated German national utility executives on U.S. and Canadian utility operations. This includes rate setting, cost of service, and rate of return. There are so many benefits. I've learned one thing in all those years is that the benefits of utility regulation far outweigh trying to do it yourself. And let me explain the three benefits. First is cost of service is lowered. The commission staff, since that's a profession, routinely evaluate cost of service on a standardized basis yearly to look for discrepancies, outflyers. And they question a utility when they see an outflying expense that they don't understand. As a result, most utility managers, including Tellico Village staff, if we were regulated, would be very conscious of their expenses because they know their expenses are going to be compared to every other utility in the state of Tennessee for outflying expenses. The second advantage, review rate increases. Like reviewing costs, the Utility Commission analyzes the application for irregularities and prudence before approving it. The third is that they segregate the funds for utility projects in utility revenues so that it can't be diverted to non-utility purposes other than rate of return, which is accepted. Now here's a benefit for each of you, and I'm sure that you've received a lot of opposition from the rate increases on water, personally. When you get the stamp of approval from the Utility Commission, you can tell the residents of Tellico Village that you had these rates reviewed by the state and they were approved as prudent. Talk to the state. That takes a lot of pressure off of you individually. So the cost of service are lowered, rates are reviewed for prudency, and the third ensures that utility revenues are segregated. And the fourth, for you, takes a lot of political pressure off of each of you. So please, I know the course you've gone down so far, but please reconsider, open your minds, and consider accepting the Attorney General's recommendation that we be regulated as a public utility. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gary Zika again, Chota. I'll try to pick up where I was at, talking about the elevated water tank. Our problem with our water problem is simple, and it would take little or no dollars to solve. Restrict irrigation to off-peak hours. If there are still localized high elevations that are still not obtaining the volume and pressure that's needed, a small booster pump station can be built, just like at the Cooper Reserve on the north end of Tellico Village. This is not millions of dollars. This is tens of thousands of dollars. And so, please, my request is not to press forward with this elevated tank. Let the new board deal with it. There's a whole list of issues, similar to what on the main lift station. There's the same types of issues from Jacobs. And here we are just wanting to spend more money with Jacobs to try to get something rushed out the door before the end of the year. That's my recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary, for your comments.
John Olson, Tanasi. I want to cover a pet peeve of mine, that Tellico Village consumes an average of 6,000 gallons of water per home per month. I believe this was first postulated in the 2017 Jacobs report, just as recent as the last Board of Directors meeting. Steve used the number 6,000 gallons per month figure. It is wrong. And I'll go through the POA numbers that bring this out. Now, why is this important? Because the results of an incorrect water usage figures will impact the justification of water and sewage systems. For Kahidi sewage, the POA used 6,000 gallons, and that would establish a dry weather sewage number of 110 gallons per minute. So if we look at the POA numbers, 3 years ago, the FAC conducted a water usage study to support the water rate increase instituted in the 2023 water rates. Do you remember that graph? That was presented by Brad under the water study from FAC. As it shows, January, February, and March bars have the monthly usage above them. For January and February and March of 2022, the average was 2,501 gallons. PSAC conducted a water loss study just 1 month ago. For January, February, and March of '24, the average monthly use was 2,641 gallons. This same PSAC water loss study did 2025 numbers. For the January, February, and March 2025, the average monthly use was 2,579 gallons. So for the years 2023, 2024, and 2025, the average water usage was 2,574 gallons per month per home. For January, February, and March would be normally considered the non-irrigation months. Let's see how this matches up with meter readings taken by Jacobs for the December 2021 sewer model. Readings had that the dry weather flow at the main lift station was 260 gallons per minute. The main village had about 4,500 homes at that time. Using 2,574 gallons per month times the 4,500 homes results in 268 gallons per minute from the average monthly usage number. That's a very good correlation to the 260 measured in the report. I'll go back.
John, just want to be clear,
Thank you.
I may have not have communicated properly on that 6,000. Just a rule of thumb, I just Googled it again. I typically use for, on average, it says 100 gallons per person per month, times 2 gets you 6,000. So I wasn't trying to infer that's Tellico Village. I'm just saying, based upon Dr. Google, that's what it gave me.
I know Google says that, Jacob said that 8 years ago. It's repeated, but based on our actual consumption numbers, it's wrong.
I never tried to infer that was Tellico Village. If I did, I apologize.
Good afternoon. My name's Bob Sawyer. I live over in Coyote. First off, I want to thank the board and all the POA staff for all the work they've done so far this year. I mean, it's been a very tough year. I've waited till now to come up and talk about my issue. And my concern is the increase in the slip fees that was from last year. It went up 10%. No other amenity in the village was anywhere close to that. And prior to that, in August of last year, the gasoline was increased from a 48% margin to a 68% margin. So that means that almost everyone who does boating, except for people who do kayaks and paddle boards and that sort of thing, had a double hit in the last year. I would like the board to consider, since the, sorry, I'm not that well prepared, that we're coming up to the time to do the finances for next year, to rescind the 10% and bring that back down to a reasonable rate. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you for your comments.
I guess I'll just add a couple of pieces of information to what the gentleman raised, Bob. First of all, in terms of gasoline, right now, Tellico is one of the low-cost options on the lake. It is, what, $4.10 a gallon or somewhere
and
around that?
$4.95 any place else on the lake that I
Yes,
found.
Yeah, so we are very competitive, if not, and there's been, I think, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, a couple instances where Tellico has been drained of boat gas because of the fact that we are a very good price. So just pointing that out. Secondly, as far as the increase in the dock slip fees, yes. I think you have to keep in mind, though, that there are limited dock space available. A study was done, we looked at that. We have, the POA still has somewhere in the neighborhood of about 140 folks on the wait list for dock slips. And we're still not as expensive as other marinas, even when you consider the fact that Tellico is not a full-service marina, which I would give you that, none of them are, but it's something that I think just has to be taken into consideration.
May I reply to your comments?
Sure.
Certainly, thank you. One, the list. When I came to Tellico Village, I just bought property in 2021, so I haven't been here very long. There was 230 people on the list. I put myself on the list. It took me less than 6 months to get a boat slip. It's not the length of the list. You're always going to have a list. One of the board members here several years ago said to Pat White when he was on the board, we are not going to build a slip for every person in Tellico Village. So there's always going to be a list. The reasonable thing to look at is how long does it take to get a slip. When I went, I said, give me a slip. I don't care. I'm at the north end. I don't care if it's there or if it's at Keady. I got a slip at Keady. I went on the change list. It took me 3 months, and then I got moved to the north end. It has nothing to do with the number of people. As far as the price for gasoline, it may be true that we are cheaper, but aren't we cheaper to our own residents for golf than people from outside? And shouldn't we be taking care of our people? I mean, this is a community. We need to work together. That's what I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And it's interesting because it would be nice if, yes, we could, as residents of Tellico Village, get a better price on our gasoline and then charge anybody else coming in more, right? It'd be nice to be able to do that. I don't think we have that capability, but sure, I agree. It sure would be nice if we could get it for $4.05 and charge other people $4.95. That'd be great.
Well, everything's computerized. It's all on credit
No,
cards.
I'm saying,
You-
yeah, if we could figure it out.
We have plenty of people with computer knowledge in this village who could figure that out for us. I mean, it can be done if we want to. Thank you.
We will consider it. Thank you. Thank you for your patience.
No problem. Picking up where I left off, the Jacobs sewage report for dry weather flow has good correlation with the 2574 gallons per month for home. Okay, thank you. Hear me now? Yeah. Okay. Anyways, now let's calculate Kahidi at build-out with 800 homes using the 2574 gallons per month. Dry weather flow, using that number, would be 48 gallons per month. Kahidi design used 110 gallons per month. Where this indicates problems is the design wet water flow for Kahidi is 480 gallons per minute. The wet weather flow to dry weather flow ratio, using the correct dry weather flow, would be 10. The average dry weather flow to wet weather flow in the main village at the main pump station was 5. So if the 400 gallons per minute is real, we have a massive I&I problem in Kahidi, 2 times as much as the main village. We've done an extensive I&I study in Kahidi. We have meters installed to measure actual flow. Are we seeing the differences in our study? This 2x. If we are seeing the 480 gallons per minute wet weather flow, what is causing the 2x difference compared to the main village? Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Greg Mitchell from Osage Court. Just here for a question. You may be aware that a few weeks ago on Nextdoor and more recently in The Connection, a homeowner was giving some information on some build or abandoned projects in his neighborhood. I don't know any of the details one way or the other, but my question is, if such a thing happens and the project is abandoned, and obviously that could lead to some maintenance issues on the property, does the village have a responsibility to come in and at least clean up those properties while it's being, going through the court system, I assume?
Yes, sir, we do. Sorry.
Okay.
We charge what's called a completion assurance fee to builders, which equates to about 30 cents per enclosed square foot on the home. That's a non-refundable contribution to the off chance, and it sounds like it is. I've been here forever, but it sounds like we've never had to employ the use of completion assurance fee. But that's certainly where we're headed with these 3 homes. And yes, in the short run, we're going to get after the weeds. And in the long run, we face the difficulty of, yes, we would like to take care of it. The funds that you would expend to take care of it get you no better than a second position lien. So really, we're hopeful that the bank is going to step forward and resolve it because it is their asset and their collateral that's sitting on the ground.
All right, well, according to the information provided, and I haven't gone and looked at anybody's abandoned project, that the maintenance of the properties has somewhat gotten out of control. And as a homeowner, I hope that never happens in my neighborhood, but if the facts are somewhat legitimate, I would be concerned for the person who lives in that neighborhood and what they're dealing with. So my question again would just come down to, is the POA, can the POA get in there quickly, and not every week, but maybe at least once a month, to get in there and do some kind of maintenance on the grass and
Yes.
and the bushes? So is that going to start happening?
Yes.
It will. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Yes, my name is Larry Rolap. I live in Tanasi Place. I think I was up front at the last meeting, and I asked you about items that had been presented and then never followed through. And so from now on, every meeting I attend, I'm going to ask about follow-up items that you have talked about and not shared the results. Last meeting, I asked, what is the status of the selection of the general manager? You guys said, well, it takes a long time to write a resume and go through the interviewing process. That's fine, but can you update me now and update me at the subsequent meetings on that and other items that are brought before your board and not followed through? Thank you.
Thank you. And on that subject, there's a subcommittee of the board members working on that. And it is complex. One of the things, they're reviewing all the salaries nationwide on that. And we found a huge discrepancy in that. So we're trying to resolve where we're going to come in, what we're going to spend, and make sure the qualifications match for what we have.
So given that huge task that you have, is it reasonable next meeting for you to report on what the status is and how you're progressing on selecting a permanent general manager?
I will ask that committee to come back and do a report for you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Randy Bray. I'm with Tanasi. I live up in Coyote Circle. My comments are more of a personal thing to the board members. I know some of you have been on this board for a while, and I simply want to thank you for the work that you've done over the past few years trying to resolve the issues that we are experiencing in the village, which none of you were even on the board when they were created. These issues that we are facing have been created by a lack of management recognizing that the village was growing and things needed to be done. And instead of doing things when they should have been done, they did nothing and kicked the can down the road. And now we have members sitting on this board who have volunteered their time and take a lot of heat because of the way they're trying to fix the problems. I know some of these men personally, and I know the integrity that they have and the love that they have for this village, and that they are doing everything that they can to try to resolve the issues. I believe I heard a gentleman stand up here and say that he thinks that he can fix the water problem for no money. Maybe I heard that wrong, but I thought I heard him say our water pressure situation that we have, we are spending millions of dollars, and we can basically fix it for nothing or thousands of dollars. You should be on the board. And please come up with that resolution and show it how it can be done. Because my experience in the 8 years that I have been here with the POA is they have always tried to do the work on the cheap, at the lowest cost. I remember when the rec center needed a roof put on it, and they put out bids, and at the time, I had a family member who was in the roofing business that had just moved here and was trying to start up the business, and he made a quote on that roof. And his quote was twice as high as the people that got the bid. And he said, there's no way they'll be able to do that roof for that price. Lo and behold, they put that metal roof up there, and I don't think it's up there anymore. You know why? Because they couldn't do the job for the price that they had quoted. Sometimes you got to pay a little money to get what you want. And instead of putting Band-Aids on everything that we have, I suggest we fix the problems that we are dealing with, do it right, and if you can't afford to be here, you have options. Nobody ties you down here. So to the board members that have been out there and here for a long time, believe me, the majority of the village supports you. The majority of the village remains silent because we trust you. And there's nothing wrong with the people that want to bring up their issues, but they're the minority. They're the smaller part of the village. We thank you for what you've done.
Thank you for your comments.
So, I want to make one comment to what Randy said. You know, he said that, you know, if people have better ideas, get on the board. And that's fine, but I guess the point I wanted to make is you don't have to be on the board to have an influence. You know, if you got, and Gary, I know we're kind of picking on some of the things you're saying, point them out, but work with the committees that we have established to come up with the right solution. So you don't have to be on the board. You could be influential by talking to and attending and participating in those committees that the board relies on.
Just to address that, Marty, and I don't know if everybody knows, but I did apply to PSAC to work on PSAC.
Yes, I know.
And I was denied,
And I know
okay?
you did, and I think you know why you weren't selected.
And why was that?
Well, I wasn't part of the selection process. But I
Pardon me?
thought, and since we're talking about you,
Okay.
I'll be straight up. I'm always straight
Sure.
up. I think it was because of a meeting that you were in with Jacobs early on, and it got kind of out of control.
Right, and that out of
so-
control was after an hour of a PowerPoint presentation to death by Jacobs that was put on by the POA, and nobody was asking the right questions.
Yeah.
You have to ask the
You
right
know, Gary,
questions.
I think that you do have a lot of good insight. Boy, if we could just funnel that. And
Oh,
I'm
and I've
not, and
tried.
I'm not being condescending or anything,
know.
right? And I know you're trying because you keep coming back, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, some people say, I just let it roll off my back.
But
And
I
that's why
want-
I just want to do the right thing, just like you guys
So
do.
do we, exactly. And I really, really encourage you to work with PSAC. Because there's a
Oh.
lot of smart guys with a lot of good experience on PSAC as well.
I understand that, but I also
Right.
know if you want to keep going, is on the main lift station, they approved, and we'll save it for the main lift
Yeah,
station.
we
We'll
will.
save that
Okay.
for the main lift station,
But
please.
That's my point. You can be involved, right, and in a positive manner with these
Well,
committees.
and also, Gary, you know, we had a meeting with you and Jacobs and the Jacobs engineers and a few board members just for you to address your issues. And I attended that meeting. We spent about 2.5 hours going over end to end with you. So this is not that we're ignoring you. We brought you in. We had the Jacobs engineer come in. We had PSAC there, and we're trying to work with you and hear all your concerns.
And I appreciate all that, but I've also been at this for almost 2 years now. And it's like, even on what's happened on the main lift station, I'm not going to go into details, but I've been bringing up the same issues over and over, and it's just like talking to a brick wall most of the time. It's like there's a set agenda, and that's what's going to happen. And I'll get this, the PSAC says the board's approved it, the board says PSAC's approved it, and nobody's the leader. You have to act like an owner. And that's what you guys as the board are owners. You're not engineers, but you're the owners, and you got to do the right thing.
Thank you for your
We
comment.
certainly agree with that, Gary.
Are there any more comments? If not, we'll move on to the next section on the agenda.
So quick update on the Tanasi construction. I think most of the people that have, if you've been by there, most of the people are seeing that we finally have some progress, noticeable progress because there's steel in the air and erected. Quick update, we've placed over 1,000 cubic yards of concrete for the cart barn walls, floor, and we'll be placing some more concrete tomorrow for the restaurant slab, the cart barn floor, ceiling, pro shop floor next Thursday. We've done all the under slab plumbing, obviously, and the electrical conduit it was all inspected and allowed us to move forward with the concreting of the restaurant slab. We've got one last connection to make on the fire water lines, and that's out by the road, out by 444. The fire water contractor is out there today, and we'll be completing that scheduled this week. As I mentioned, everybody sees that the steel's flying and being erected. We will, as soon as we get all the steel up, we will be, and that'll be the last of the heavy equipment there, get the crane out of the yard. We'll be putting gravel and the binder layer for the restaurant parking lot over in front of the restaurant area. Right now, unfortunately, I have to say, we're about 90 days behind schedule. We are targeting the second quarter of 2025 for opening, 2026 for opening, sorry. And the reason on that schedule, obviously, as I've mentioned in the past, the cold, wet weather in January and February, and then the very hot, dry weather in June and July. The productivity goes down for the crews. They were, putting up the walls for the forms for the cart barn and all of that, and that's very heavy and draining work, so they were not quite as efficient as they would like to be. We are working with the contractor and subcontractors to recover some schedule there where we can. We've had 7 contractors on site over the last month or so, and basically doing all the work. We have a meeting every Tuesday with the contractors. Any contractor working or scheduled to work in the next 2 weeks must attend these meetings, and they do. So we know that we've got all the materials on site, and they will have they know when they're expected and what they're going to be doing. So we've had the concrete workers out there, as I mentioned. Magaha Electrical is doing all the electrical conduits. They're now working in the cart barn, trying to get the rest of the electrical there where they can. We've got the plumbers there. They've completed all that, the sanitary plumbing, grease lines. The masons, they've put in some CMUs for supporting the brick veneer that will be buried. As we do the backfilling, we're doing we've got the damp proofing. If you've noticed the black materials on the basement walls, that's the damp proofing. This excavation contractor is finishing up the drain lines around for the patio and some of our underground drainage. The fire sprinklers are being done. And then the welding, Mancini Welding, they are the steel contractors, and they are moving quite well. And because we did start them a week late, they've been working. They worked last Saturday, and they plan to work this Saturday, as well as the 5 days a week. So they're getting a lot of steel erected. To date, we've had 10 change orders. Basically, and all of these have been reviewed with the coordinating committee. The first four change orders were no cost. They were just drawing submittals and things like that. The next two change orders, basically, a lot of those revisions came from the State Fire Marshal's office. That was the additional fire hydrants, the additional fire water line. We had some civil revisions that were required because of that. So those two were previously approved. Irrigation sleeves, basically any place where we have to irrigate, like the islands in the middle of the parking lot and all, we've got sleeves underneath the asphalt so that when we put the irrigation system in later, we'll be able to get to that without having to dig up the road or the parking lot. Underslab beverage sleeves, that was an oversight on the architect's part. We have to be able to get the Coke and beer from the beer cooler to the bar. So that's a kind of an important item there. Obviously, with the muddy or the rainy May, we had mud mats put in for underneath the footers. This saved the contractor from having to continue to re-excavate those footers and then repack in, replace the soils and then repack it. And then TDOT, when we move the entrance, we've moved the entrance about 26 feet to the south of what the original entrance. We have to go, and TDOT requires that we restripe the roads with some special striping, and they also use a different admix for the any asphalt that's in there right away. So we'll be putting that on. The sum of all of these still leaves us $127,000 below the guaranteed maximum price. So even though these are change orders that increase a price, we are still below what the contractor bid, so we're not in jeopardy there. But I did feel it was important for everyone to know where we stood on that. This is just an aerial photograph of the job site. You can see up on the upper right-hand side, that's the underslab plumbing that was in. All of that's covered with gravel now. The plastic and welded wire is going down today and concrete tomorrow. On the left-hand side, you can see some of the structural steel for the cart barn. So what you don't see when you walk by is all that big steel that's under there. We also have the galvanized decking on there already. So we'll be putting, again, the concrete on that. It'll be ready to go next week. A quick update on the TAP projects. Gary, I do appreciate you pointing out all of my deficiencies in my professional background and career. So thank you very much for that. Let me just say that the TDEC fire hydrant testing, that was done per TDEC standards, and we have that report in our office right now. So if you would like to come by and look at that, feel free to do so. The storage, I apologize if there was any confusion on that storage. There's a combined storage that the water supplier as well as the water distributor must have. We have 500,000 gallons of that. LUB has 1 million gallons of water storage for us, and then TAS has their own storage. What I meant to say, if I wasn't clear about this when I said we can't count on LUB for that storage, is LUB must meet their storage for everybody, of which our 500,000 gallons tank is some of that. So, and they did, TDEC did in their latest sanitary survey say that we needed to replace, either repair or replace our water tank, our 500,000 gallon water tank, because we need that 500,000 gallons. We can get it from someplace else, but we have to do something with our tank. And I apologize if there was any confusion on that. We are continuing, one other thing, let me back up to that. Gary, you did mention you had some questions that went to Jacob. Those questions, I believe, all were submitted to Jacobs. We are waiting for their response to that, and they are doing the assessment on elevated versus ground storage versus storage tank at all. So that report is due, I believe, mid-September. So it's not that we've ignored you, they just haven't completed the answers yet. So again, thank you for those questions. The RDI&I efforts, we continue on that. Right now, we have gone through and inspected about 45% of the tanks within the main village, and we have remediated. As of yesterday, we are less than 1 week behind. Every tank that we have inspected through last Friday that needed an extension, we have put those extensions on. And I think, as I've mentioned previously, when our inspector finds damaged lids, he has been replacing those lids, and we've replaced over 100 lids throughout this inspection process, which is something we probably 2 to 3 years worth of lids that we would normally do during regular maintenance. So we are trying to take care of the I&I efforts. I believe that's the end of that.
Okay, let's move on to the next agenda item, the capital requests. No. Scott, I believe that's you.
I believe that's me again as well. So the main pump station, basically, the condition of the main pump station, just a quick overview for everyone that may not be familiar with this. Our main pump station is 40 years old. That's the end of the life for concrete type wet wells in this service. It is, and we know that the bottom of the wet well and the wall in the center of it have been seriously bad conditions. It was such poor conditions that the bottom, the floor of the wet well could not hold anchor bolts for the new pumps, wastewater pumps that we put in 2018. So we had to put in a steel plate in order to hold those. The existing wet well has a flat bottom. It doesn't meet current standards. It is also oversized for the service and improperly designed for the service that it's in. The existing building needs significant repairs due to corrosion, and all of the electrical fixtures and electrical components would need to be replaced should we not move forward with a new wet well or a new main pump station. The existing odor control system is out of service and needs to be replaced. Basically, right now, if we have an emergency in there, it's 5 to 10 minutes that we have to open the building and wait till it airs out before we can even go in to do anything. Whether we go with a new wet well or renovate this one, we will need to install a backup generator. Current standards by TDEC require 2 sources of power, and right now we only have a single source coming in from LUB. I did check with the LUB electrical supervisor, and she said that they cannot supply us another fully independent source of electricity to that pump station. She can give us a second route, but that would be significantly more expensive than and it would come from the same pump station, or same substation as our current power. It would be significantly more expensive than a generator. And then the new design includes a surge tank, and that is to minimize water hammer in the 4th main when pumps start or stop when we pump it over to LUB. Basically, there's been some questions asked about how do we get to our current cost for this project. The original bid, as many of you know, came in at $8.6 million. We only had a single bid. We did check with the grant administrator, and they assured us that since we did a public solicitation and we had 4 people come to that solicitation, and only 1 went ahead and bid, it was still okay to negotiate with them. The only other option would be to just cancel the project and resolicit in the future. If we do that, we lose the $2.1 million. So basically, I've itemized how we've come down with this. We eliminated the need for bypass pumping. That was an error on the contractor's part. There was a statement in the original bid documents that said you can't have the pump station out of service for more than 30 minutes, and he took that to mean at the full 1,500 gallon a minute flow rate. So that was when it's pouring down rain, we wouldn't be taking the pump station out of service for doing any maintenance in the rain anyway. There was some allowance in there for tariffs. We now have quotes with all of the tariffs that currently exist in there. so they're not in there. There was some high-priced equipment that the POA has decided that we will purchase instead. So there's a $1.4 million reduction there. Some other items there. So basically, if you look at all the summary there, we've got $3.6 million that came out. So the current bid from SCI, the contractor, is $4.95 million. And then we've got $600,000 worth of materials that or equipment that we will be purchasing in lieu of the contractor, and that is our pumps, the odor control system, and the surge tank. And one of the big changes on the pumps, and why it's such a significant difference, is when the original bid came in, the contractor only had one of the two bidders that he solicited had returned his bid at the time that it needed to come to us. That bid was for the three variable speed pumps was $675,000 with another $180,000 of variable speed drives from the electrical contractor. The new bid that we got from the second contractor that came in was $354,000 for both, or for all three pumps, including the variable speed drives. That nets out to a combined construction cost for the project of $5.5 million. With the $2.1 million grant, that nets out to $3.4 million. Just a quick comparison on the renovate key items versus main pump station new items. Basically, the big things on the new pump station, if you were to go new, would be we would need the wet well, we would need the odor control, the three pumps, electrical, and the electrical, which is the new MCCs and controls. So basic, and a building to house that. So that's what the bid is over there. So I've estimated that, or accounted for that, excuse me. These are quotes, so it's $1.49 million. For the renovate, we don't know what the cost to renovate the wet well is. That has not been investigated. We just have no idea. So that would be an additional cost to the summary that I did there. The new odor control system would be the same. It would be a little bit larger because the larger wet well with the larger amount of septic waste in it. The new pumps, or the existing pumps, would need to be pulled. We would rework them while we're out there. So that I estimated $20,000. That was the last time we had a pump pulled and had to have some work done on one of our pumps. That was what it cost, Kevin, so we did that. The VFDs, as I mentioned, $60,000 a piece, so that's $120,000 there. Don't have a price in there for a new spare. If we could get the I&I down sufficiently such those pumps would work and be adequate, we might not need a second spare, so that cost could go away. The electrical would have to be new, as I mentioned. Current electrical system does not comply with current code. It would have to be upgraded if we touch the electrical in there, which putting the VFDs in does. There would be some bypass pumping obviously required to do the renovations on the wet well, to do the inspections, to reline it or whatever else needed to be done. And also those, with using the existing costs that we know, it would be about $1.45 million, $1.46 million. So essentially the same cost. All of the other field piping, instrumentation, controls, et cetera, they've estimated that those would be very similar, if not the same, whether you go new or whether you renovate. So it's very likely that the cost for a renovated wet well and main pump station would be equal to or in excess of what going new would be, and we forfeit the $2.1 million grant. Just a quick follow-up on this one. We did follow all of the required procurement processes. The scheduling, so as I mentioned, we went to the bidder, we had open solicitation, bidders received the one bid, granting agency confirmed with Matt and I that we were authorized to negotiate with them. The scheduling, here's the critical part on the schedule, and that is that as we've progressed through what we're required to do here in Tellico Village to get these. I went to PSAC, they reviewed. I believe a couple of the PSAC members will get up after I do and talk about this, what they've done. FAC reviewed and recommended that the board approve. We have to get the red line drawings that Jacobs gave to the contractor for the rebid. We need to get those compliant so that at the end, when we get audited, we have drawings that say, we built what was designed. A contract would be required to be executed by the middle of September so we can give the contractor notice to proceed by October 1st. The reason for that is his bid says if he gets NTP by November 1st, October 1st, he will be complete by September 30th, 2026, which is the hard deadline for the grant money. We have to be substantially complete, invoices to follow. As I mentioned, the other options that we've considered on this, delay the project. If we delay the project and rebid either with this current design or a new design, we forfeit the $2.1 million. It is unlikely, in my opinion, and in PSAC's opinion, that we would have a significantly different design that would cost significantly less, certainly not $2.1 million less. The other one is consider renovating the main pump station. Again, I believe that the cost for renovating the existing pump station with all of the upgrades and all of the new equipment that must be installed in order to get a good functioning project would be far in excess of the 2.1 of the cost of the new pump station, and certainly if we forfeit the 2.1 million, we wouldn't even be close, in my opinion. So basically on this funding request, what I'm asking the board to do and approve is two funding requests. One to authorize the POA to enter into a contract with SCI for the $4.95 million that they quoted, and for the board to authorize the POA to procure those three items, the three pumps, the odor control system, and the surge tank for not to exceed $600,000. Those are all hard, firm quotes that we have, and I believe that's adequate for where we are at this point. I think at this point, Matt, you wanted me to have Chris Costello and John Tierney or George. Y'all gonna do this, George? Or your guys? Thank you.
I'm George Luttrell. I am a member of PSAC and had the privilege of being the chair this year. And first of all, I just want to reiterate what one of the fellows said, that the board is here to, in good faith, and serves in good faith, and are trying to do the right thing for the village, as we are in the PSAC as well. And I'm privileged to work with a bunch of well-qualified engineers with a lot of experience and so forth and so on. I don't want to go over all the stuff that Scott did, but we are in full alignment. In fact, and I believe it was January, we said at that point we did have a design that has been modified since then, based on input and more research and so forth and so on. We said that we, regardless of the grant, we prefer new. And as we've gone through all this process of reviewing it internally and externally with the engineers, we have maintained that position. Nothing has challenged that. I will say also that my experience was, I'm not an engineer, but I have a construction degree and spent 42 years with one of the, in 2025 last year, rated number 5 design firms in the United States. Chris is going to come up and tell you where he comes from. The point being I did everything from estimating to material management control, to project engineering, to project controls, to project director, and engineering manager. Now, I'm not a registered engineer. I can't design anything. I can talk bad about it and so forth and so on, but I'm not the guy that can do that. But I've worked with engineers, and I am confident in our engineers that work, that bring their expertise to this particular project. And what that tells me is we've got 4 engineers who have agreed this is a good way to go. I want to also speak a little bit about Jacobs. I know Jacobs got a terrible name around here. I don't know that we can prove that they're out to screw us and take advantage of us, except that if you look at what the fellow said about kicking can down the road, we hired them because we thought they were the right contractor to do that. And I say we, POA did, the POA board approved it, but then you got to manage them. And if you keep changing stuff and you issue work orders and so forth and so on, and then change your mind and you spend more money, and you change your mind and you spend more money, you get what you don't pay for. One of the things I learned in my career is indecision costs money. It does. So we have 4 engineers that agree this is an approach that will work. Nobody has any doubt about that. By the way, Jacobs is currently, I think it's number 2, isn't it, Chris? Yeah, they're number 2 in the Engineering News Record Top 500. And that's the Bible in rating these things. So what we have today, and where I'm coming from, is we have 2 options that will work. One is pretty clean. You know, you get a new thing, you get a new installation that'll last another 40 years with proper maintenance, and you could probably squeeze out a few more years. Or you've got another one that will work, and that's the renovation where you're chasing the final solution. By that I mean the big red flag that went up for me, I've never heard of soft concrete before, but apparently that's what we got in the wet well. And what that means is that's got to go away. You got to do something different. You got to repair the dividing wall. What else is left? You're going to rebuild the thing, and you're going to have to get engineers to come in and do all that, and it's going to be piecemeal in my mind. You don't know when you're going to get to the end of it. You could also decide to go back and just redo the whole thing. Well, then you got to select another engineering firm. Are they going to have the right people? And so forth and so on. So it's just, it just goes on and on. Now, I did want to say one other thing about design engineers from Jacobs. They're going to stamp drawings. When they stamp drawings, they put their livelihood and their careers on the line legally, not their company. The company cannot protect them. There was a lawsuit probably 30 years ago where a walkway in a Kansas City hotel failed, and it was an error that one of their engineers did, and the company protected them. Well, the law changed and said that individual is liable for this. So these guys designed this thing. They're going to stamp the drawings, because you have to do that to get them approved before you can build this stuff. And they have put their careers and livelihoods on the line. So, you know, they think they're qualified engineers. They're PEs just like Gary and a bunch of other folks around here. The last thing I want to say about that particular thing, there's a lot of opinions, and you can say your opinion just as long as you want to. Not everybody agrees with your opinion. Will this work? I'm absolutely convinced it will. And I want to see a nice, brand-new main pump station that we can rely on for a long time. That's pretty much what I have to say.
Thanks, George.
One thing, George, just to confirm, you are a property owner, right?
Yes. I'll benefit from the new lift station.
Hi, folks. John Tierney, the Assistant Chairman or Vice Chairman of the PSAC, Public Service Advisory Committee. resident since 2019. Began attending the PSAC meetings in 2020, mostly through Zoom because of COVID, and was appointed to PSAC in 2021. I'm a retired civil engineer, previously licensed in Illinois and Wisconsin, and a certified floodplain manager. I want to give you some history of where we were or how we got to this point. But first, I want to give you a little more credentials of where I'm coming from on my background. I went to Villanova University on an ROTC scholarship, so I owed the Navy 5 years, and so I spent 5 years at Great Lakes Naval Base maintaining facilities, administering construction contracts, and doing construction inspections. After that, I spent 8 years with the Village of Mundelein, a community outside Chicago of about 25,000 people when I left. I was the village engineer and assistant village engineer there. We replaced 2 sewage lift stations, 2 neighborhood sewage lift stations, upgraded a wastewater treatment plant from 3.5 million gallons a day to 5 million gallons a day with a 35 million gallon a day excess flow capacity because of the I&I. And that excess flow capacity, the cost of those facilities were paid for by the feds and the state through grants and loans because they recognize that you can't get rid of all the I&I. So we're going to try and get as much as we can here, but you're not going to get rid of all of it. Following that, I spent about 20 years as a consulting engineer, doing mostly municipal engineering, some transportation engineering, but acting as the city engineer or town engineer or village engineer under contract as a consultant for dozens of communities in the Chicago suburbs and Milwaukee suburbs. When I first moved here, I dug into whatever studies were available on the Public Works website. You drill down into the POA website, and down there near the bottom, there's some old studies on paving and sewers and water. And the one that caught my eye was the 2019 parametric sewers study, basically a desktop study that was done by Buddy Murray, at the time the staff engineer who worked for the POA. And he basically just said, we got these many pump stations, they got this much capacity, and we got these many people who are going to be here in the future. And he had some recommendations that they were okay for now, but in the future we might have a problem. But he did say that the main pump station was going to require an upgrade. That was but we needed to model things. So that's when Jacobs was brought on board to do the collection system model and a master plan for our sewer system. They presented that in 2022. There were 3 projects that were on the list initially. The first was to do work at Mialacqua, and then Tokwa, and then the master pump station. However, through various discussions, it was determined that it's best to work on the main pump station first and then work outward from there. Especially one of the big items that they identified was that the main pump station does not meet the Hydraulic Institute standards for firm capacity. About October 2022, we had a 10% preliminary engineering report from them and gave us alternatives. In one of those alternatives was the installation of a storage tank. We're not talking about putting a tank in now, just want to clarify that. In 2023, they presented the 30% design. There were numerous meetings and reviews of their designs. Myself and a former member of PSAC, he no longer resides in the village, but Jim Hockey, he spent 40 years as a civil engineer. Between the 2 of us and the staff here, the public works staff, we did a lot of value engineering, a lot of critiquing of Jacobs' work, and making sure that it was in line with our goals. We beat up on Jacobs pretty badly, some of these reports. Throughout 2023, there were numerous discussions on what was going to happen with the tank and other options with the pump station. And we spent almost an entire year. I do want to point out that I've only been here since 2019, so 6 years as a resident. I've seen 3 different public works directors and 3 different general managers here. So through each one of those changes, we had stops and starts with the consultants also. So that's one of the challenges we've had. 2024, we got the 60% plans and specifications, did a detailed review of that. And then we proceeded to bid. So that's kind of where we're at with the history of things. And then we all know how the bids came out. They were way higher than we expected. So from January to March, there were a lot of plan changes, and I'm not going to get into any more of that because it's already been covered by Scott. So I'll let Chris jump in here. Chris is a relatively new member of PSAC, joined this year, so he's got a fresh set of eyes on all of these historical documents, and let him explain what he's seen.
Thanks, John.
Good afternoon. Name's Christopher Costello. I'm a resident of Tokwa. We moved here, my wife and I, in June of 2023. As previously mentioned, I was appointed to PSAC in January of 2025. 3 months before we moved, I retired in March of 2023 from a 44-year private sector career as a civil engineer with only 2 employers, starting off as a staff level engineer, winding up as a senior project manager in the water and wastewater divisions of KFAC, and now it was absorbed by my employer, AECOM, who is the #1 rated firm in the 2025 Engineer News Record. My primary expertise throughout my career was potable water distribution, wastewater collection, and pumping. In addition to that, later in my career, I was also made a project quality manager for the Northeast region for all the water and wastewater projects that AECOM was doing, because we were ISO 9001 certified, and we had to make sure, or I had to make sure, that all of the projects that were assigned to me properly documented all of the quality procedures, policies, and documentation. They have it on file, because every 3 years the ISO auditors would come along and audit our projects, and I was responsible for that as well. So I joined PSAC in January 2025. The status of the main pump station at that time was we had 100% design of the new pump station and the wet weather storage tank. I took a very close look at that, reviewed all the plans, all the specs, and it made perfect sense to me. It's a very simple, straightforward pump station, right? You've got 3 submersible pumps, lead, lag, standby. Their operation alternates so that they can balance out the wear. It's in a 12-foot diameter polymer cement precast concrete wet well. The polymer cement concrete has a design life of not 50 years like regular reinforced concrete in sewage pump stations, up to 75 to 100-year design life. And no maintenance, no lining, no nothing. So I took a look at all that. It made perfect sense to me. I was wholly supportive of it. And since that time, I've gone back in history and I reviewed some of the other reports that Jacobs prepared for this, the 10% preliminary engineering report, the 30% basis of design report. I can talk a little bit about that preliminary engineering report, because at the last PSAC meeting, we had a number of concerns that the residents raised about why are we only voting on this? Why aren't we looking at other alternatives? Because you don't design 2 alternatives as a solution to 100% complete and then decide which one are we going to go with. No, that's done early on. It's always done early on in the design process, in the preliminary design phase. And if you go back to that preliminary engineering report, Jacobs developed the design criteria to solve the problem at hand. And then they came up with 3 different alternatives, 2 of which involved rehabilitating the existing pump station. And they evaluated the advantages and the disadvantages of that, and they performed cost estimates with about a 30% contingency factor on each one of those alternatives, because cost is part of the evaluation criteria. If you have 2 alternatives that meet all the design criteria, one is a little bit better on its technical merits, but if it costs 3 or 4 or 5 times more than another alternative that also meets the design criteria, which way do you think it's going to go? Cost matters. So I've got a little excerpt here from that PER report, and Jacobs listed all of the advantages and the disadvantages of each one of these alternatives, and for both alternatives that utilize the existing pump station going forward, their primary disadvantage was relying on the continued use of a 35 to 40-year-old existing wet well that will likely need further rehabilitation or, quote, renewal, as in replacement, during the 75-year life cycle of the proposed new pump station. Both alternatives. So they came up and they recommended a new pump station in the PER, which was given to PSAC. PSAC approved that, gave it to the board and approved it. And when that's done, and you have a recommended alternative going forward in the preliminary design phase, all of the other alternatives that were under consideration wind up on the cutting room floor. And they are no longer under consideration, and the design process moves into final design. That's why at the PSAC meeting, we were voting on one alternative. A new pump station, thumbs up or thumbs down, because all of these other alternatives had been previously vetted. Another thing I want to talk about, the existing pump station. Scott's gone through all of the conditions of it, things like that. I took a look at this from a designer standpoint, and it's been previously stated that when Cooper's engineers designed the wastewater collection system here, your individual residential tanks, they thought they were going to function as a septic tank. It would settle on all the solids, would have to be pumped out once every 3 years. With a pump, they would just pump the liquid effluent up to the main pump station. The exact same kind of wastewater collection system that we had in our house in New Hampshire, where we had that would pump effluent to shared common leach fields. So essentially you were pumping effluent to the main pump station, which was essentially a leach field tank, if it were. If they had designed that properly, realizing that what we have is a sewage grinder pump tank that discharges sewage and sludge, they never would have designed the pump station the way they did. They shouldn't have. Back then in the mid-'80s, submersible pump stations were a thing. They were not as prevalent now as they are now. But another solution that they likely would have done, and I want to show you this book, by the way, this book is entitled Collection and Pumping of Wastewater. It was published by McCaffenetti, my former employer. Many of the chapters and the illustrations were prepared by my former colleagues who were actually my mentors earlier in my career. So what they likely would have done, which would have worked out much better, would be if they had designed what they call a wet well, dry well pump station. And I've got a couple illustrations here that hopefully can be shown. Here, what you have, here's your pump station here in plan view, above looking down on it. You've got a divider wall, say with our pump station, a divider wall that would have been parallel to the long dimensions of it, not like the divider wall, okay? On one side of that divider wall would be the wet well that all the sewage comes into, and the other side of the wall is the dry well where you have your centrifugal pumps. So this is the wet well here that all of the sewage, wastewater sewage comes into, and here's the dry well where you've got your pump station. And then in a cross section here, if you were going to, let's see, here's a cross-sectional view, and you can see this is the wet well, this is the dry well, and you note the sloped walls between the exterior wall and the base slab to keep all your solids and everything from settling in the corners. That's one of the biggest problems we have in this. Oh, anyway, that's essentially why I fully support this proposed new wastewater pump station. It's the right way to go. And that's it. How am I doing on time? Okay?
Doing good.
Okay. I have one other thing I'd just like to mention here. I've often heard an analogy spoken that, if you have a car, a used car, and the transmission lets go, do you get rid of the car? No, you replace the transmission. This is in support of rehabilitating the existing pump station. I have a slightly different analogy that I think is a little more representative of what we have. Everybody here in this room is old enough to remember 1960s cars, perhaps with some nostalgia. However, they really weren't that good if you take a real hard look at them. Number one, they only had 5-digit odometers for a reason. The bodies always rusted out much sooner rather than later in the floorboards, like a Flintstone mobile. Other systems, exhaust, brakes, brake lines, frames rot out. And so what we have here, in my opinion, is an analogy of you've got an old car, it's nearing the end of its design life, and then the transmission lets go. There you go. Am I going to continue to throw good money after bad, or am I going to get rid of the car and start over? Anyway, that's, I got to say, that's my recommendation. I would urge the board to not kick the can down the road, to not forego this $2.1 million grant, which is money right there for the taking, and to vote to approve the 2 funding requests that Scott mentioned earlier. Any questions? All right, thank you very much.
Yeah, hey, Chris, before you get up, I got a couple of questions real quick. When everybody approved the original new or refurbished, do you remember what numbers were being kicked around?
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
He asked,
How
do
much
you remember
money-
when they approved the thing in January, what numbers were being kicked around for between the rehab and the new?
I think it was, what, $3.5 million for the new and 2.8 for the rehab, I believe, but.
At that point, it was $600,000 difference about?
Yeah, about that, yeah.
Yeah, that's
And
kind
then,
of what I remember.
when the bid came in, when the high bid came in, Jacobs went back to the same suppliers that the contractor went to reconfirm their quotes. And as Scott had mentioned, that there were a number of things that the contractor had misinterpreted in his bid, which the POA negotiated down to the figures that we have before us.
In that space, do you remember what Jacob's original estimate was from the 2022 wastewater supply document?
Let's see. Yes, I have it in the preliminary engineering report. Yes.
Yeah,
it was,
dated December 14th, 2021.
Right. So alternative one was to upgrade the existing lift station 3.97 million, a new lift station at 5.5 million, and expand.
No, that's not in the 20. Hey, Judy or Karen, I just sent you an email with all of Jacob's actual numbers, and the original upgrade of the Cokewood pump station was 2.27, with a 50% contingency, got it up to 3.45, 3.5. And I just sent that in, Karen. If you could bring those up, I'd sure appreciate it.
Well, I'm looking at saying, go ahead, Mike.
That was a Toka pump station, not the main pump station?
No,
It was the main.
no, this in the preliminary engineering report from
Yeah.
2022 with the construction cost estimates. That was the quote. The base cost for upgrade the existing main lift station was 3.97 million, 5.5 million for the new main pump station, and 4.26 million to expand the lift station, expand the existing lift station, which was another one of the alternatives. Okay?
Table 6.1 in that report, existing 2022 main lift upgrade was 2.27 and 3.45. So that's kind of where I got that. The other issue that I had, did Jacobs ever consider I&I reduction throughout the village?
Mike, can you repeat that? We have a hard time hearing you here.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Hey, did Jacobs ever consider I&I reduction in the village?
Well, Jacobs was, from what I understand, Scott, you can speak to that? Yeah. Scott's going to speak to that.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, Mike, the design criteria is with no I&I reduction because at this particular point, one, we haven't completed the I&I plan, nor have we demonstrated that the I&I reduction, the remediation efforts that have been done are effective, and therefore, by the design criteria, they can't take that into account. Additionally, if the I&I reduction is successful, there's nothing that precludes the use of the new pump station as is, and as mentioned, that that I&I reduction must be successful in order for the existing pumps to be capable and meet the design criteria of the lower wet weather flow rates, and the new pump station with the variable speed pumps and all would be able to handle that. And remember, the variable speed pump, or the normal pump rate, is about 97% of the time that what we will be pumping. It's only when we have the high wet weather conditions that we need to deal with the higher flow rates.
And when we have the higher flow rates, how much are we discharging to LUB?
The higher flow rates at the design criteria would be 1,500 gallons per minute. That's at build out. Current is 1,260, and LUB limits us to the 1,100. But again, they are putting in that new water line, and that was the reason why when we eliminated the storage tank, the pumps were originally 550 gallons a minute for the 1,100 when you have the two duty pumps and the one standby. And when the storage tank was eliminated, in order to get the 1,500 GPM design, the pump sizes were increased to 750 gallons a minute each for the the lead lag and then the standby.
So unless and until LUB increases our available shipping to them, or we reduce I&I, this won't solve our problem. Is that correct?
If LUB does not install the new line, then we are forced back into that dreaded storage tank, because there is no way to get, whether with the existing or a new pump station, there's no way to get the design capacity. So the I&I reduction either has to work, we have to figure out another way to reduce the I&I for future builds, or LUB has to take care of their transport problems, which they are doing under consent decree.
Thank you.
Yes, the new wet well will work better than the existing facility if LUB does nothing.
But the new wet well will not allow, LUB will not allow the new well to work better if it can't take 1,500 gallons a minute.
We would just limit the pump speeds and the pump capacity to what we're currently being limited with the existing wet well, with the existing pump station, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions here from the board?
Yes, I do. Scott, do you mind staying up there? I've got 8 items, please. I'll try to be brief. Number one, Scott, I thank you for the going back and get the second quote to lower the pumps from 675 to 345, getting that second opinion.
Those quotes were requested by the vendor as well. They just hadn't gotten in a timely manner from when we required the quote, when we required the bid.
Well, that's great. I commend you. That's really good. Second thing is, why didn't we have a price for renovating the main pump station wet well? The cost and the rehab.
Why did we not have a price?
Mm-hmm. We just did 7, 8 years ago. What was the cost then?
No, all we did 7 or 8 years ago was we cleaned it, we lined it,
and put a metal plate in it.
And then we had to put a bottom plate in to support the pump bases because the concrete wouldn't hold it. We did not renovate the concrete
Okay.
or the wet well. We just lined it.
Okay. So the rehab quote that you had up here, which I think when we add the 4 million, which they didn't see, we talked about earlier, it brings it to about 5.4 million. Does that have a PE on it, a engineer stamp on that estimate?
No.
Okay. Number 4.
It doesn't have a design, so it can't have a PE stamp on it, Joel.
Are there any concerns with buying the materials ourselves rather than let the contractor do it? And I'll be more specific. The timing of getting the materials, the specifications, the chance that there could be a mistake made, and the miscellaneous items that go along with a turnkey request from the supplier versus us trying to reduce costs by bypassing them buying it and buying it ourselves. Do you have any concerns with those 3 things? Timing, specifications, matching, and miscellaneous materials?
I do not have any concerns with that. We have hard money quotes to the specifications that Jacobs put out for construction. Jacobs has reviewed those and determined that those quotes were compliant with the specifications. And because we've got the quotes in-house, all we have to do is should the board approve, would be go ahead and contact those vendors and go ahead and get those get those pieces of equipment on order.
Understood, but it could be a delay. Number 5, spill mitigation risk. The drawing I saw for the main pump station, they're talking about having a pipe access to the lake and the berm. It currently has a berm protecting the water from spilling in the lake. What's that all about? If it overflows, because the reason we're doing this thing, the main reason is to prevent spillover in the lake. And the new design has a pipe that would allow access to the lake where now it's a berm.
There is not a berm around it right now. There is a partial berm with a roadway going that's about 12 to 15 feet wide at grade, that goes straight to the lake. The line that you're talking about is for stormwater that comes down the driveway to the main pump station. It bypasses the lift station, and that is the overflow that goes to the lake. It's to take stormwater out of and away from the main pump station.
Okay. 10-year warranty, what does that mean? So if we line it, what's the warranty good for?
The warranty is the 10 years for the new lining.
Meaning that if there's any problem within 10 years,
They reline it.
Okay. So I retired from Honda. We sell cars with 3 years, 36,000-mile warranty. Do we get rid of them at 36,000? So the warranty to 36, does that mean that they're going to fail? Because you made mention that we have to, if we got a couple more years, we got to do it again.
It is, if we are going to, if we're going to go through the trouble of bypassing the wet well, emptying it, and inspecting it, assuming that there is no problem with the existing liner, it would be prudent to reline it, because otherwise, you're going to need to be replacing. It has only a guarantee. It has the 10-year warranty.
Right.
It has a 15-year life. So you've got 5 more years on that life. And again, Honda gives you a 3-year, 36-month warranty, but you usually replace the car in 5 or 6 years. Now, some people like myself, I drive them till they fall apart. So I've got 95,000 miles on an 11-year-old car.
Okay. Thank you. So, George, you said you never heard of soft concrete. I know of a couple of engineers that did do a simple hammer test on a main pump station and couldn't find any soft concrete. So contacted Hot Springs Village, which is our sister community that was also put in place by CCI, Cooper Communities Incorporated. Their Cortez is their main pump station. It's been in place since 1974. Same size as ours, 10 by 20, concrete, flat bottom. It, like I said, it's over 50 years old. They just recoated it 3 years ago, and they have no plans of replacing it anytime soon. You know what they are going to do, though, is going to replace the current pumps with 250 horsepower pumps in the next 6 weeks. So, yeah, I'm not so sure I'm with this useful life being 40 years, when theirs is the same design. It's over 50 years old. They just recoated it, and then they're going to invest more in the pumps to bring it up to speed.
Yeah, when I talked to their former public works director, now general manager, he said the big difference between what their main pump station is and what ours is we have a very long detention time on our pump station where they don't. They have a lot more water flowing through that main pump station so that they don't have the septic system, as much of a septic material sitting in there attacking the main pump station that we do in ours. So there is a difference in operating conditions, although the design may have been the same.
Okay. And can we, right now, could we purchase a wet well that has a flat bottom? Does the AWWA prevent you from doing that?
If you can purchase a wet well that has a flat bottom, but what you then have to do when you install it is go ahead and put in the angles in order to direct, to prevent the pocketing and pooling of sludge and materials in those corners. So yes, you can buy a flat bottom wet well because it's easier to manufacture, but then in the field, you then are required to go ahead and slope the bottom.
So ours is not obsolete then, because it's flat bottom?
We could go in and modify, assuming that the concrete in the bottom is structurally adequate, we could go in and modify that, so that adds to the remediation cost. So yes, we would have to go in, remove the liner, go ahead and slope to the pump, and then reline.
Okay. And the last one, I appreciate your patience. This is, I know, not a very popular one, but I'm going to say it anyway. When I'm looking at the grant, and I'm looking at D34, verse D, that could make us ineligible for the grant, have not, within a 3-year period, had a loan terminated for cause. I know we said the bank is the one that made a mistake on the PPP. Are we sure we're exempt from that?
I believe we are. Yes, I believe we are.
Okay. Thank you for your time and patience.
Any other questions before I take my seat?
Just one thing, Scott. The loan was forgiven by the, what was it, the Better Business, not the Small Business Association. So we didn't have a loan. It was forgiven.
The PPP?
Yeah.
We had to pay.
We had to pay back the money, not the PPP. The loan was forgiven.
Any other questions by board members? Nope. Okay, at that point, we're going to open up for comment to the public. Oh, I need a motion for the two.
Ed, I'll make a motion that the board approve the expenditure of $4,950,000 for a contract with SCI to construct a new wastewater main pump station under the specifications set forth.
I second the motion.
And do you want the second, well, I guess we got to do one motion at a time, or you want the second motion also?
Let's
Okay,
do the.
so
yeah.
I'll make a second motion that the board approve the expenditure of $600,000 to purchase 3 variable speed pumps, a surge tank, and an odor control system associated with the main village pump station in association with the SCI contract.
I second.
Okay, we've had comment from the board, so we'll open this up to public comment on the on the main pump workstation only. Yeah, 3-minute timer.
Microphone, please.
Try it again. Okay, Gary Zika, I'm going to try to be quicker. Again, just as what Joel said and what Mike said too, was that this lift station has a smaller wet well. That increases the risk of overflows, and that's the whole idea of replacing this lift station. You are getting a smaller wet well, what you have today. It will overflow more often. That's the first risk. The second one is as Joe was also saying, is that, and Scott tried to explain it, that the stormwater drainage detention basin that they've built, but when the wet well will overflow now, if you replace it, it's going to go into that detention basin. That detention basin has a pipe that goes straight to the lake. Today, that is not how the system is operating. So again, the risk of going water now into the lake is increased because you've got a direct conduit. It is going to be a 12-inch line pouring straight into the lake when it overflows. Today, that does not happen. The third one is receiving the grant monies. Everybody thinks, oh, we're going to get $2 million. Well, there's a risk to pay it back. A grant administrator stating everything will be fine, but nothing in writing, and Matt confirmed, they never did it in writing, that when you've asked all the questions and they said, yeah, you could do that, no, you've got a contract, but this is how it works, none of that's in writing. And from my professional experience, federal monies have strings attached that never go away. This is a true case of the good old boys until it isn't. And we now know PPP loan, we had to pay it back. That is a very high risk. And LUB, as Mike had mentioned, until LUB increases their line capacity or the pump capacity, this lift station is not going to be able to put 1,500 gallons to LUB. So all those are risk. As the PSAC members got up here and talked about it, January 25 is when the drawings were done. And there was a whole list of questions, and a lot of things is what Scott has gone through and negotiated all these items. Those are the same items I brought up in January. The design was deficient then. It's still deficient because of the wet wells being smaller. There was no bypass pumping connections. That was changed with an addendum. He says that the clearing of the land for the wastewater tank, and that was off the FAC presentations, they've corrected that because there's no wastewater tank being put in. And I could go on and on with these details. These are all details that design was so good in 25. Why are we making all these changes? Why? Because we didn't pay attention to the detail. And George, you said that it was all approved in 25 or in January, but now the latest vote, it wasn't unanimous. There were still people on your committee that was questioning things. Why didn't we get a redesign? And that redesign for rehab or for a brand new lift station? Because I think, Chris, you talked about it, you okayed this design. If you started this design today, would it look anything like what you've got out there now? And the answer, I'm going to answer it for you, is no, because this design started out with a wastewater tank and a secondary lift station. So no. The one quote from one contractor, that's nearly 3 times the engineer's estimate. If that isn't a red flag to people, we're not building a house. We're building a major infrastructure piece. And, you know, these additional costs to fix, that was the other thing. You've had 2 things.
Can you finish in 30 seconds?
Yep, 2 things. Was one, PSAC voted on 3 items. Where's the additional monies for Jacobs to do the engineering drawings? That Jacobs, well, the PSAC members approved everything without any drawings, without any cost comparison like the FAC had, yet they approved everything. Again, you got to get into details if you're going to be doing this stuff. And today, and I don't want to say this, but the POA, because I'm one of the POA, we're getting ourselves in the position that we're now getting in a reputation on both professional engineers and the contractors. We have paid close to $3 million to Jacobs. And yes, Mike, we've gotten reports from them. They're very pricey reports for a little bit of work. And
Gary, I'm going to stop you for a second. The information I've been furnished, we've paid Jacobs $1.7 million, not $3 million.
And I'm just going off of what you guys approved.
No, we did not know. Let's just leave it at it's $1.7 million. If you want to inflate the number, fine, that's your choice, but it's 1.7. Continue on.
Okay. So anyway, and as contractors, the word is now out, hey, the Telco Village, you got to bid it high. You know why? Because we're going to negotiate with you. And if anybody knows doing contract work, what you want is accurate, fair, and simple designs that you could base off of. And you get competitive pricing, not the way we've done it.
Can you end it there?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, John Olson, Tanasi. I'm not going to comment on the design. What gives me angst is the bidder was $3 million, $3.5 million higher than the revised bid. Why did he take the liberty to upgrade the POA design? Because you sat down and stripped $3.5 million out of the bid. I assume you rolled it back to the original design. You changed the design?
I would want PSAC to answer that, but from my recollection is not. And being involved in hundreds of different bids, yes, and computer stuff, not stuff like that. A lot of times when you do an RFP, there was confusion on there, and you go back and renegotiate some things. One of the big confusions was the $750,000 for the bypass pump, how much it's needed. So there's always something when you go into a bid, there's some clarifications. So that is from my understanding on some of the stuff that we went back and did. And like we said, purchasing the equipment ourselves. Anytime somebody purchases it for you, they have staff they've got to pay to do that, track it, and vet it. So there's always a little charge on that. So we're trying to get along in that. That's some of the savings we're getting here. But I mean, from my understanding, they did not change the design. And I would ask Scott or George to just address that.
Well, okay, so the design is bid, got rebid to the design, and they came down $3 million. I'm just saying that gives me angst with this contractor, that he took the liberty, or whatever you want to call it, to put more into the design than we had in the design. And I just think that we're going to have to be very, very careful with this contractor. And I don't know if Scott's going to need an assistant to run herd on this guy day in and day out, because I just have concern. I mean, if this guy went that far over the design, what's he going to try and get away with as we try to get this put in?
I will tell you, we will watch, just as we're watching Tanasi very closely at this point. I think the PSAC committee is going to be all over this.
Good,
So,
good.
okay.
The one other thing I might comment on is that we were talking about the age of the concrete being, I believe, 40 years old, something like that. Just want everybody to remember that this year, the Fort Loudon Dam will be 82 years old.
Thank you for your comments.
All right, I have just one comment. Long time ago, when my children were small, the daycare provider used to, I think she had 6 kids that she was watching. She used to do laundry to keep the bed sheeting and all that stuff. Somebody else stopped watching kids, so now she's got 8 kids. And I start to help her a little bit because she was overwhelmed with all these kids. Then she had 12 kids, and her washing machine broke. She had a Speed Queen. I don't know if you know anything about Speed Queens, but they are like the king of laundry machines.
We just bought one.
Okay. So the problem with her machine, I start to talk to her. I'm very mechanical. I am somebody who wants to keep things working if they're of quality, but she wants to look at this new washing machine. So anyhow, we go through this whole cost analysis of let's keep this thing working because it's got this big tank, but she wants this new washing machine. With this new washing machine, I had to tell her, it was almost half as small as her big washing machine that she had. So anyhow, she bought the new washing machine, but I just begged her not to get rid of the old one. She couldn't keep up. So she still has all this bedding to do. She's got all these new kids that she's washing. She was overwhelmed. Fortunately, she didn't get rid of her washing machine, so she was able to fix it, and she was glad that I talked her into being sensible. So I parlay that story to what we're doing here. I do not understand why we're considering reducing the poop tank storage by 60%, especially if our community is growing. It just seems foreign to me. And I'm telling the story because I do kind of get some of the technical aspects that Gary's been explaining, but I think the average Joe doesn't get all this stuff because it is very complex and it's very confusing, but they might be able to understand the story of the washing machine. And we're doing the same thing. And I don't understand if this is the right thing to be still needing more houses that are going to come online, and we're reducing the main pump station by 60%. It just seems like it's not a well-thought position. So I just wanted to make my comments.
Thank you very much for your comments. Scott?
6 minutes.
Yep.
Let me just say that while I appreciate what Gary and Teresa just said, they're both totally wrong. The size of the wet well may be 60% smaller than the size of the current wet well. It holds significantly. The current wet well is always half full. Additionally, wet wells are not storage. They are the pickup place point for the pumps. We are increasing the capacity of those pumps from 1,100 to 1,500 gallons. We're actually increasing the ability to handle wastewater coming into and going out of the wet well by 30%. So it's actually an increase in wastewater flow handling capacity. If we get to a point where LUB shuts us off with the current system or with another system, we have the same risk. There is no difference. What you have is a properly designed wet well, the right size with the larger pumps, which is what we need.
And how many minutes do we lose in storage capacity of LUB?
3 minutes.
Yeah, right. Before overflow.
3 minutes.
And Scott, can you or one of the PSAC guys address this whole issue of overflow and then going down the pipe into the lake with the new design?
Yeah. With the new design, because of the increased capacity of the pumps, the probability of an overflow is substantially less. There is also a way to close off that valve, close off that line, but again, you would have stormwater and wastewater mixed, and it's going down the road right now anyway, so you have the same risk with the new wet well as you would with the existing pump station and all. And to go back to John's question is how do we get some the cost reductions? $1 million of it was just clarification on the tariffs and the bypass pumping not needed. And then with the additional bid, the second bid on the pumps, there was another $800,000. So that's 1.8 million of the 3.6. And the other thing is, why did we tighten up the design? That was my direction. That was a mistake or a contingency that I asked the contractor to maintain. And that is because we didn't know whether remediation was going to work, and we hadn't completely said, you will not need a storage tank, because we didn't know where LUB was at the time, because this was back in January. So we had just opened conversations with LUB about another line going under. I said, we have to leave provisions for a storage tank and the second set of wet wells, the second wet well. So that, to be a nice clean design, had the two wet wells side by side and the piping going between them. We have 1,100 here, overflow goes into the second wet well, and then that gets pumped to the storage tank. When we eliminated the storage tank, and LUB said they were going to go ahead and put a line in, now we could tighten that up. But I had already directed Jacobs to keep it where it was. That's what we went out for bid with when we started talking. It says, let's just slide all that equipment to where the second wet well would be, and that's how we got all the rest of the savings. So it's not a different design, it's just a tighter design with no second wet well.
So Scott and PSAC, when we're talking about overflows, the only way to prevent an overflow here is a tank with either system.
Or having having LUB put in that other line so that they could handle the capacity. Or, and again, if we are successful in the reduction in the INI, which we are working very aggressively on. As I mentioned in my presentation, we're 45% through. We expect to be finished with all the inspections probably between first and second quarter of next year, and we are putting on the extensions literally within weeks. It's the public works people that are doing. If they're really busy, they might not do any this week. If we only find 5 or 10, they might not do any this week. They wait till they have about 2 dozen, because that's what they can do in a day. So it's very efficient for them to do that.
So our risk here, I want to just, because I'm a risk person, our risk here is LUB getting their line underneath and us reducing INI.
Yes.
Those are our risks.
Scott, one other question. The risers you're putting on these tanks, is there any guarantee that solves INI?
No.
That's all I want to know.
No,
We're hopeful.
The reason why we are hoping it will solve the INI. What we're doing is, as we inspect the tanks, we're doing a couple of things. We're doing a physical inspection, so we're looking to see, are the two, the conduit and the discharge line, are they sealed? So our guys, our inspectors, when they look, they can see those two because they're up in the, what they can't see is that 4-inch line that brings the sewage in out of your house. So if there's something wrong with that gasket, or there's some other way for rainwater, stormwater to get into there, we can't tell that, okay? But, and those are the other places where the public works people that deal with these tanks every day thinks we can get significant I&I. So that's why I'm saying, I don't know that just putting those extensions on will solve the problem. We are also finding a couple of tanks that need to be replaced. They've either got root intrusion or whatever. We just dug up a tank in Tokwa yesterday and replaced it with a brand new tank because of where it sat and how bad it had been, and the damage that had been done to it. So we replaced one of the tanks yesterday.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure everybody understands that we're hoping the risers have a significant impact on I&I. It may not. Correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
I think the other thing that I want to validate is, and the presentation showed it, is that even without the grant, we're looking at roughly comparable numbers for new versus renovate. In fact, the renovate column did not include any cost to actually renovate the wet well. So in that regard, that option would be more expensive. So you have the option then of new, which certainly has a lot longer lifespan than renovate the current one. That seems like, at least that's the summary that I got from listening to this.
So if there's no more comments, I think we're going for a vote. We're really backed up on time. We got to be out of here by 4:30 today. So we got other items we have to move on for. So,
Mr. Chairman, I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
go ahead, Mike.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask for a roll call vote, please.
Call vote, okay. Yep. We can do that.
Mike Braddock, yes, both motions. Will you turn the mic on? Mike Braddock, yes, both motions.
Marty Inkrat, yes.
Ed Grolleman, yes.
Steve Schneider, yes on both.
Joel Reed, no on both.
Mike Lackey, no on both.
So the resolutions pass 4-2. Thank you. Next item, please.
I was looking ahead to the updated reserve study. Two quick things I wanted to mention. I think it was back in November, I'm going to say for sure fourth quarter of 2024, we purchased a new financial system, and that is Sage Intact. And we have not transitioned every piece and part of our financial system away from the AS400. But as for phase one that was intended, we went live July 1. And call it August the 1st, was the first month closing with the new financial system. And I'd love to tell you it went swimmingly. I'm just going to tell you it went well. Like with any financial system, there's going to be room to grow, opportunities to learn, hopefully find efficiencies and do things more effective. But I do want to offer my thanks to the entire finance department. When you switch out a finance system, particularly when you make a leap from an AS400 system to a cloud-based accounting system, it's light years difference. And there was an incredible amount of work by the finance department to pull that off. Also want to thank some members of the FAC and a couple members of the board that kind of helped us and pushed us and at times had to pull us. And we're appreciative of all of their oversight and their contributions. So I'm pleased to report that system is up and running. The second thing that I can't probably find the gentleman in the audience that was asking about the abandoned homes. I just got a text message. We'll be getting after the weeds and the grass next week. There's two homes roughly right next to each other. I can't remember the address. And the third home is in a separate place. So we're going to be after the weeds and the grass and try to get that knocked down. And then, as we described, we have the issue of either finishing the structure or demolishing it. So we're making some progress there. It's going to take some time. That's all.
Mary Gaddy. I don't know if this question should be posed to Scott or to Matt, but I remember when the contract was signed for the Tanasi Clubhouse and Restaurant, Chet made a point of talking about how there would be financial penalties if timelines were not met. So hearing that we're 90 days delayed, I'm wondering if there's been any conversations with RTC about any type of financial compensation back to us for the fact that they are 3 months delayed and we're still a year away from, the building being finished.
I'm sorry, I wasn't in this position when that contract was signed. I don't know.
I do remember him being
No, I
very.
understand what you're saying.
So I'm wondering if
I'm not
someone could look
objecting
at
to what
that
you're saying.
contract to see if indeed we are owed money for not meeting the timeline stipulations. I mean, they're a local contractor. They know Tennessee weather patterns. So
I understand.
I would think they would be putting into their schedule wet winters, cold winters, hot summers.
Could we simply just get name, phone number, email, and we'll get back
Sure.
with you? That'd
Yeah.
be our preference. Thank you.
Okay.
Judy?
You're going to get a lot of me today.
Can you really work fast, please?
I will go as fast as possible. Okay, so we're going to talk about our 2026 reserve study and our cash flow analysis that goes with it. I'm going to try to keep it at a real high level and give you a clear sense of some of the key numbers as we move along. You're going to hear me referring to this study as the 2026 study, and that's because we'll start using it and putting it into our planning starting January 1, 2026, even though we're finalizing the study in 2025. Okay, so why are we here? We're here to look at how the reserve study and the cash flow analysis fit into our broader five-year financial planning. We have long-term and short-term perspectives to keep in mind. So let's look at what a reserve study really is. We should think of the reserve study as a forecasting tool. It doesn't dictate the spending decisions. It tells us what we should expect to spend and keep assets in good condition. And there's some industry standards down there at the bottom. When we talk about percent funded, that is simply current reserves divided by the fully funded balance. And in reserve study terms, less than 30% is low, meaning that we have a high risk of special assessments. 30 to 70% is fair with some risk. 70 to 100% is strong, indicating that we are prepared and planning responsibly. And these are industry definitions, not just TVPOA measures. So with that in mind, let's look at some of our specific assumptions that shaped our 26 study. Compared to 2023, we have removed about $312 million in assets from planned funding. Assets in the plan have a combined current replacement value of $48 million as of January the 1st, 2026. With inflation, that total grows to $84 million over 30 years. Once TAP projects are placed in service, those totals will rise to $62.3 million currently and $129.2 million over 30 years. Reserve planning has now been split into two categories, water sewer and non-water sewer. This gives us and the community a clearer view of which assets fall into each group and what their specific funding needs are. The study assumes 3% annual inflation and contributions that target full funding of included assets over 5 years. A big part of this update is the treatment of the zero funded assets, so let's look at those next. Zero funded assets exist, they have value, and may one day need replacement, but they are not slated for funding in the current plan. Why is this? Many of these assets have useful lives beyond 30 years, which is outside the study horizon. Examples of these long-living assets include water and sewer pipes, brick and mortar buildings, golf greens, and fairways. They're not ignored, just managed differently, mainly through preventive maintenance. But the financial obligation does not go away, so what are the risks of not funding these through our reserves? Again, excluding $312 million in assets from our funding plan lowers our reserve targets today, but those assets still exist. Without a plan, their eventual cost could compete with other priorities, delay projects, or require special assessments or borrowing. The study is designed to fund some of our assets, but not all, and it's important to keep that distinction clear. Let's look at how this change compares to our last study. In 2023, the funded asset list totaled about $361 million. In 2026, as I just said, it is $48.8 million. The difference is about $312 million that we are calling zero funded. Over 30 years, replacement costs for funded assets totaled about $84 million, compared to $1.2 billion in the previous study. This future value difference is approximately $1.1 billion. Again, these assets remain part of our infrastructure, they're just not currently funded. And you can review, you can see what's on the slide up there. We've got bunkers, greens, and fairways, water system, which is mostly pipes. We've got road replacements. The maintenance will be handled through our operating budget. And then buildings and building renovations are no longer included, being covered in the study. We do have money in the study for exterior painting, roofing, interior painting, and furniture, but no wholesale renovation of a building.
And HVAC systems.
And HVAC systems, yes, sir. So now let's look at what the reserve study actually does show for the assets that are funded. The reserve study gives us three key insights. First, in 2026, it suggests contributing about $4.6 million a year on average to put us on track towards 100% funding of the assets covered by the plan. Second, it lists those funded assets along with their projected replacement timing and cost, giving us a clear view of what will eventually need to be replaced. And third, it shows the reserve balance we'd need at any given time to remain fully funded and keep up with the plan's schedule. Again, we're targeting 100% for fully funded assets because we have such a large amount of the non-funded assets. That helps us reduce the risk by having a higher level of funding for the covered assets. In short, the reserve study provides us with a strong long-term roadmap for the assets that it covers, but it only covers those assets. To see the bigger picture, including major projects and debt, we need cash flow analysis. The reserve study is a critical planning tool, but by design, it only funds the replacement of assets within its scope. That means that it does not account for other major financial obligations that we know are coming. It doesn't include large capital projects like TAP and the Tanasi rebuild. It doesn't cover debt obligations, that's the principal portion of the debt payments. And it doesn't include other 5-year capital priorities that are outside of the study. Together, the reserve study and cash flow analysis give us a complete financial roadmap. The reserve study and cash flow model work together to give us the full picture. The reserve study sets the ideal long-term contribution path for funded assets, while the cash flow model adds reality, incorporating new projects, debt obligations, and all known spending into a budget-based forecast. The reserve study tells us what we would be putting aside over time to keep up with asset replacements. The cash flow model shows what we expect to contribute in the real world given our current budget and priorities. To make this clearer, we'll look at a quick household example. This example was provided by Brad Spiegel back in June 2024. There's a YouTube presentation where he was trying to help us better understand what a reserve study does. So he parlayed that into a household example. You're saving for money for a roof or an HVAC replacement for your home. That would be your reserves. Then you decide to add a pool, a big new cost that's not in the plan. You need a different source of funding to build that pool. Once it's built, you start saving for its upkeep going forward. That goes back into your reserve spending. That's how we want to look at TAP and Tanasi. That's how they fit into our plan. Once built, they're added to our future replacement schedules and covered by the reserve. With that in mind, now this is the real part of the presentation, the meat. We're going to look at some of our cash flow scenarios. I want to start off by saying this, and I can't reiterate this or emphasize this enough. This is an illustrative cash flow forecast This is not a final board-approved plan and does not incorporate 2026 budget ideas. The numbers will be reviewed in detail during the budget process and will certainly change. This first view combines water, sewer, and non-water sewer into one big picture. Starting with our total reserve balance as of July the 1st, 2025, that's last month, it was $33 million. That figure includes the WESAF balance, the water sewer reserve that has been set up separately, and the general reserve balances. The 2025 column, the rest of the numbers on that column, reflect expected spending and surpluses for the rest of the year. The yellow number is the balance of the net surplus that we expect to contribute from July through December. Each year, the balance is adjusted for non-TAP capital projects from last year's 5-year forecast. We had the budgeted numbers that were reviewed and approved by the board, and then within that budget, there is a 5-year forecast that puts where we expect things to go, what the capital expenses are expected to be, but those numbers are not approved by the board. They're just an estimate of the future. Tanasi rebuild costs in 25 and 26 that includes contract completion plus POA funded costs to finish the project. The potential LUB sewer partnership is up there in 27 and 28, a total of $3 million, and that is still very much under discussion, but we've put it in there as a potential. Reserve study expenditures, that's the next line below that LUB line, are amounts that we set aside now to ensure funds are available for upcoming replacement needs. Those are from the reserve study. This is not the same thing as immediate spending plans, and they will be reduced where those needs are already covered in the non-TAP capital line above. Water sewer TAP projects use the latest scope and timeline. This will also certainly be updated during the budget process for any better information that we have in hand at that time. Principal on long-term debt is down below that, and that includes the 2026 balloon payment for our CCI land, which is offset by forecasted CCI land sales right below that. The model assumes that this is a model just for 26 through 29, that we will contribute $10.5 million per year in operating surplus to the plan. For context, road maintenance of $1.5 million will shift to the operating budget in 2026. So this compares to the $12 million in 2025 that we budgeted for contributions to reserves when roads would have been included in the non-TAP capital line above. You'll see reserves dip sharply during the heavy project years, bottoming out around 48% funded in 2027, leaving us more exposed to cost overruns or emergencies. Then from 2029 going forward, reserve levels begin recovering towards our long-term funding targets. So now this view isolates water and sewer reserves so that we can see their trajectory separate from the non-water sewer reserves or plan. On July the 1st, we started with $3.6 million remaining in the WESAF account and $7.7 million in the new water sewer reserve account. And we're going to talk next after this presentation on how we came up with that number, that $7.7 million number. WESAF will be used first for TAP-approved spending until it is depleted. After that, TAP costs shift to the general water sewer reserve fund. The WESAF carryover gives us a head start, but by 2027, our water sewer reserves dip negative in this illustration. The model assumes that the same $4 million of operational surplus contributions will be made each year from the water sewer budget. This is not enough to keep up with the TAP spending, leaving us short in 27 and 28. General reserves will need to be used to cover those shortfalls if they occur, and that's about $3.3 million in total, those two orange numbers at the bottom, 1.9 and 1.4. The non-TAP capital, let me go back, I wasn't done. The non-TAP capital line reflects items from the 2025 5-year forecast, again, same as what I said about the total up there, things like vehicles, equipment, and meters that are that our water sewer department needs, but they're not part of TAP. After the TAP projects are completed, we'll still have a long way to climb back to 100% funded for water sewer reserves. You can see how it actually dips into the negative, and then even in 2029, we're only sitting at 47%. Now I'm ready for the next one. So this view isolates the non-water sewer reserves, everything outside of the water sewer system. On July the 1st, we started with the general reserve balance of $21.7 million, which includes funds earmarked for Tanasi and other non-water sewer projects. Obviously, the primary driver of spending here is going to be our Tanasi rebuild and remaining costs for 25 and 26, plus POA incurred items outside the contract. Other capital projects from the 2025 five-year capital forecast for non-water sewer departments would include those requests from recreation, golf, food service, and other public works needs outside of water and sewer. Reserve study expenditures are funds set aside now for future replacements of funded costs, funded assets, not necessarily spent in the year shown, and reduced where the project already appears in the capital line above, the non-TAP capital line. Operational surplus contributions are modeled at $6.5 million per year starting in 2026 compared to what would have been $8 million in 2025, again with that $1.5 million road expenditure included in now being included in operations. Balances dip during heavy project years, reaching about 45% funded at the end of 26. Note that these figures have not been reduced for reserves that will be shifted to the water sewer reserves in 27 and 28 to cover those shortfalls that we just looked at. The consolidated view, the slide that we just looked at 2 slides before this, does show the net effect of making that transfer. After the major construction phase, reserves begin to recover, allowing us to work back towards the 100% funding target. These 3 views, consolidated, water sewer only, and non-water sewer, show us how reserves could trend through the major project years and beyond. The takeaway is that while our funding levels recover over time, the project years leave us more exposed to risk. Price volatility, emergency repairs, or falling short of our planned operational surpluses, could quickly erode our position. So with this in mind, let's take a look at what's to come next. We'll finalize the reserve study and post it on the website for everyone to see. We will refine the funding strategies during the budget process, aligning our contributions and cash flow with better informed timelines and priorities. And please do, again, expect changes to those presented cash flow scenarios that we just showed. We'll update the reserve plan regularly as new assets like our TAP projects are placed in service, so replacement schedules stay accurate. As TAP and Tanasi come online, we're adding valuable assets to the village, but with those assets also come a greater set of financial obligations that we'll need to plan for. That's where tools like the reserve study and cash flow analysis matter. They give us structure and discipline to plan responsibly instead of reacting when costs hit. The 26 reserve study gives us a clear and actionable roadmap built with director input and grounded in practical priorities. It tells us what needs over the long term will be to keep funded assets in good condition. At the same time, we can't ignore the $312 million in zero funded assets. They aren't covered in this plan, but they may require future funding solutions. That's a long-term risk we'll need to keep in front of us on the radar. And finally, the near-term reality is that major projects and asset replacements will put pressure on our cash. That makes disciplined planning, spending control, and awareness of our risks absolutely essential. And if you have any questions or comments, would like to give us feedback to help us do better, please feel free to email me. And again, the reserve study will be posted onto the website when we get it finalized, and we'll continue talking about this as we go through the next months. And there's going to be an appendix of attached to this when it's online. So now I'm going to talk to you about the water sewer reserve, but how we got that $7.7 million opening balance that you just looked at. We are creating a separate fund for the water sewer reserves so that everybody will see clear financial separation from the general reserves. This will definitely improve transparency in our planning and reporting and help ensure that water sewer funds are appropriate for covering what they need to cover and that they are only being used for water sewer needs. This was the timelines for how we calculated the beginning balance. We started with the 12/31/21 reserve balance from the audited financial statements. Actually, it was from the notes to the financial statements. And this is prior to the funds being collapsed into one balance. That was the balance. We added contributions and surpluses and subtracted capital spending from 2022 through June of 2025. And then the final balance that we used to create the reserve was the June 30th, 2025 balance. So up until that point, it included even the 2025 January through June net surpluses and non-tap water sewer capital spending. Oops, and we're kind of covered up there a little bit, but we started with that 12/31/21 audited financial number of $2.2 million. And again, that I've got a little footnote down there that came from the 2022 notes to consolidated financial statements, and that note is referred to as designated cash and cash equivalents and designated investments on page 13. And then we added the 22 contributions of $878,000 and subtracted out the 22 capital spending, $330,000. From there, we added the actual net surpluses from our financials and subtracted out the water sewer capital spending each year. And I want to point out that in 2024 and 2025, during the period that we had the WESAF account available, being funded October through June, all of the WESAF spending came out of WESAF. That spending has not come out of this account, nor have the contributions gone into this account. So the ending balance as of June the 30th is $7.7 million, and that's the number that we used to create the beginning balance, reestablishing the account. So here's a summary of what we intend to do with the account. Every month, transfers of the water sewer net surplus will be transferred into the water sewer reserve account. Funds will be used for water sewer capital, infrastructure, or emergencies. The first priority for the TAP projects will be whatever is left in that WESAF account. As long as it has a balance, that's what we'll use first for the TAP projects. Transfers from the general reserves may be considered if they are needed, and which we saw in the cash flow. We are sort of expecting that they will be. And separate tracking will maintain clarity and accountability for us and for the village. And that's it. And I've got more detailed calculations of all the contributions and withdrawals that'll be in the appendix online. And then I'm going to go to.
Thank you for your team for putting that together.
Oh, yeah,
I know it was a lot of work.
Yeah, woo, fast. Wish I went together as fast as it was delivered. Are we doing questions now, or you? Oh, hello back there.
Question?
Yep.
Based upon what Judy just presented, am I correct in assuming that unless we find additional revenue sources, that no major capital new project can be built?
That's kind of been stated by the board in the past, that until we get through these water and sewer projects, there are no new capital projects.
Thank you very much.
Unless they're funded by telco, timeless telco or something like that.
What should be an outside funding source?
Yes.
Yeah, so just to state what he just said slightly differently, which has been the same message for at least a year, if longer, is none of this includes any funding for major new amenities.
Correct.
Watch this. Judy, I've got what's probably a dumb question, except I believe there aren't any.
There's no
And I probably.
I might have a dumb answer.
I probably misunderstood you, but I thought I heard you say that the $80 fee money was not in that calculation. Am I wrong about that? Is it really in there?
We're keeping the WESAF account balance separate. So this new water sewer fund is just water sewer surpluses. and
Okay,
spending that
okay.
is not.
So
tax
the
spending.
$80 fee money is not going in the segregated account?
It's remaining in the WESAF separated account that was established,
And will be
the one we
spent,
already have.
So there's two segregated
but
accounts?
only
Yes.
for a short period of time, because basically as spending is done on water and sewer
Tap
tap
projects.
projects, and that expectation is within the next year, that fund will be depleted, and then.
The WESAF fund?
The WESAF
Yes.
fund, thank you, yes. And then everything will shift over to the separate water and sewer reserve fund.
Okay, then I wasn't wrong.
Of course.
So does this also assume that there is no change in your assessments, your monthly assessments, and/or no changes in your water rate? Because those are two variables that could increase, right?
Sure, what we did, the models that I showed were just based on a target. We desire to contribute $10.5 million total from our net surpluses on a consolidated basis for the whole POA in 2026 when we design the budget. Those are our budget targets that were approved as initial guidance for us to set out when we start development of the budget. Anything could change as we move along, but right now, we are going to aim to keep the contributions from water sewer, the net surplus from water and sewer, the same, roughly the same as what it is from 2025, which is roughly $4 million. And then the balance would come from general contributions of $6.5 million.
Another way to say it, this analysis assumes a constant funding of reserves based upon the reserve study. A total of 10 million, give or take, 4 of which goes into water and sewer per the reserve study. Whatever it takes from costs subtracted from whatever the revenues are, it could mean 5%, it could mean 0, who knows what it is until we run the numbers. All this does is it plugs a constant funding. We have to go through the analysis and say what happens to rates and what happens to costs and
So-
tweak.
The answer to the question is, it keeps it at a status quo through that time period. But to your point, your assessments could go up, your water and sewer rates could go up to meet that target.
Yes, we have to
Exactly.
hit the target.
Bingo.
Whatever the formula is between revenues and expenses.
Right.
To hit the target, the important thing is we've got to hit the target.
We need the 10 million going to reserves, period. You figure out how to get there.
And what we do know is that our water rates from LUB will increase in 2026 from roughly
417 to 484.
per thousand gallon to 484.
Any more questions before I move on? Okay. We'll start off looking at our balance sheet. Our cash balance is $37.1 million at the end of July. That's an increase of $6.3 million since December. We are earning a weighted average rate of 4.21% on our reserve balance and 3.5% on much of our operating cash. Our reserve balances, as we've just been talking about it, are split between general reserves, water sewer reserves, and the WESAF fund, which you can see on the slide. And that number is even bigger, and we're going to talk about that number too, the $8.3 million that's now in the water sewer reserve at the end of July, as opposed to when we started it at 7.7 at the beginning of July. Our balance sheet shows total assets of $79.5 million. That's up $10.9 million year-to-date. Growth in cash and in our CIP balances are the greatest contributors to that change. Our total liabilities are $22.4 million. That's up $4.8 million, primarily due to increases in unearned revenue over there on the bottom right. Our debt-to-equity ratio remained at 16% this month. Now we're going to look at the accounts receivable up there on the top right. The health of our accounts receivable is still strong, going strong. The ratio of the allowance to the AR balance is 36% this month. That's unchanged from June and an improvement from 41% in December. Information on suspended accounts, the balance due on suspended accounts remains lower than it was in December and year over year. The current balance of $740,000 represents 36% of our current accounts receivable balance. Looking at our unearned revenue, current balance is $9.7 million. It includes upfront payments from residents for prepaid assessments, golf, and rec fees. Utility assessments and collected unspent WESAF funds collectively represent 64% of the current total. And back to our WESAF accounting. The balance forward on 2020 from 2024 was $1.1 million, and again, I'm going to talk to those little red asterisks. $2,889,000 has been contributed to the account through July. As you can see, the contribution in July was much smaller than what it has been in the prior months. We were previously showing about a $450,000 contribution. So that number is now coming from just the new connections to the account, the catch-ups and such, and the homes that were already in progress that had not yet made that payment. Ongoing WESAF collections will only come from new connections to our system while the fee is under suspension. We have spent $318,000 on 3 projects this year: the elevated water tower, main pump station, and odor control. That was unchanged this month. No more money this month was spent on the projects. So we still see $318,000 of earned revenue on our income statement, while the remainder of the funds collected are still in that unearned balance that we just looked at, $3,680,000. Additionally, the account has earned $56,291 of interest income in 2025, and the balance is now $3,741,000, and that matches what we just saw on the balance sheet. Here is our consolidated P&L, and this is for everything, both water, sewer, and not water, sewer. We finished July with a gross profit of $19,977,000, which is $361,000 better than our forecast. We beat prior year gross profit by $855,000. That's assessments and water, sewer rates and gallons consumed make that difference up from the prior year. Our expenses through July totaled $13,670,000 and were $1,864,000 better than budget. That looks like a mighty big number. The primary contributor to this result is the timing of major road maintenance that was budgeted in June and July, but will be completed in August and September. Y'all all got the telegram, and I guess you're probably experiencing that right now if you are near the Malacqua or Tanasi Shores area where they're trying to finish up the paving. It got pushed back because of the wet spring, and all the contractors' work got pushed back. Other communities' work got pushed back, and that pushed ours back as well. Other contributors to the variance include wages and benefits, which were $170,000 better than budget, and other maintenance expenses beyond just the road work were $295,000 better than budget. Most of that was from various public works departments, maintenance of sewer lines, common property, golf maintenance, rec, and food service also had some unspent maintenance expense for buildings and such. Our other income and expenses are contributing $933,000 favorably to the budget through July. $318,000 of this comes from that revenue reported as earned from WESAF spending that has been spent on one of those 5 projects. Gain on the sale of lots or used equipment account for $208,000 of that variance, and interest income, which is $407,000 greater than expected, primarily because we were anticipating spending a lot more of our reserves sooner rather than later, and so we've earned a greater amount of interest income than we thought we would this year. Our net income through July totaled $6,043,000. Adding back depreciation, our net surplus was $7,499,000, which is $3,157,000 better than the budget expectations. This year-to-date variance is roughly 70% from operations, the numbers that we talked about, and 30% from other income. The variance will drop significantly once we have that street work completed. So here is a look at our new water sewer reserve fund and our net surpluses from operations through the end of July. These results are included in the totals that we just reviewed on the previous slide. That was a consolidated result. This is just water and sewer. So I keep showing you different numbers, but as of January the 1st, the reserve balance would have been $6.7 million up there on top. Again, we opened the account on July the 1st. So that number that we opened the account with already had earnings and spending out of it for the first half of the year. I backed up into that number because the numbers from the income statement are year-to-date, so they are January through July results. So I wanted to start with a January 1st balance in the account. And you can see what the revenue and the gross profit were, and then the total expenses that we've incurred year-to-date, and the depreciation to get to our net income. You add the depreciation back, and you get to our net surplus. So that's $1,895,000 of net surplus through July that will be added, has been added to the balance of $6,691,000. We have spent $344,000 in January through July this year. That's going to be on vehicles and meters and non-tap equipment. The account has earned $27,000 in interest, so that number in yellow at the bottom, $8,269,000, is the number we saw on the balance sheet for the water sewer reserve account at the end of July. And I keep making you move that all over the place, Karen. So here's a look at our net surplus and subsidy by division. We see our our operational net surplus is $7,499,000. We just saw that on the previous slide. Less $6,437,000 in reserve spending through July, and that leaves us with $1,063,000 in net surplus year-to-date after capital spending. And obviously, the largest part of the spending year-to-date has been on Tanasi. So here's a spending report kind of showing some of the details. The total reserve spending budget, including the carryovers from '24, is $21.7 million. Authorized spending on these projects year-to-date has been $16.1 million, and divisional spending results for 2025 so far add up to that same number that we just saw on the previous slide, $6,437,000. And now we are ready for the remainder of our funding requests. Beyond the main pump station, I guess we can start with Wells, if you want to come up here and talk about your request. Thank you, everyone. I can sit here in case anybody has any questions.
I'm going to stand.
You sure? Okay.
Just sitting that long. So our request coming forward this month is for a reel grinder at Tokwa Golf Maintenance. Just to give you a little background, a reel grinder is what we use to sharpen. Each golf course has between 25 and 30 reels at each golf course, and you use a spin grinder to grind these reels to within 1/1000th of an inch. The one that we're replacing is the original that was bought in 1985, and it was actually bought used, so it's a 1982 model reel grinder. We're having a hard time finding some parts. We've been able to find some parts off some mid-90s models, but the current reel grinder has no safety features. There's no shield, dust and spark shield. There's no lift table, and it does not have the ability to relief grind. So we've started to notice a decrease in our quality of cut at Tokwa. In fact, we've actually brought the one. So I guess in the village, we have 2 reel grinders for 3 golf courses. One set of reel and bed knife grinders is stored in a trailer that we bought off of an equipment vendor in the early 2000s. That one typically lives at Kahidi, and then Tokwa houses the 2 for the main side of the village. But some of the problems that we've had out of the one at Tokwa this year, we've had to bring the trailer over from Kahidi to grind reels on this side of the village. You'll see the funding request is slightly over budget. Last year during this process, we were really trying to dial in some of our capital expenses. We got a couple written quotes. We got a verbal quote from a company that said they could get us a basic reel grinder for much less than our original budget amount, which was around $64,000. trying to dial in some of these budget amounts. We felt like, okay, you know, this company said they could get us a basic reel grinder for around $40,000. We did not realize until we got the actual written quote in December that basic reel grinder was exactly as they described. It was very basic. It had no shield, no ability to relief grind, and no ability to lift the reels off the ground, which would require two people to kind of get those reels up. And we had a hard time getting a demo in our area as well. There's nobody really in the greater Knoxville area that uses the SIP grinders. They're good grinders. They're being used this week at the Tour Championship in Atlanta. But the very basic model is not what's being used down there. So we kind of went through the list of options that we wanted to add on to it. And if we went with the SIP, with the relief grind, with a shield, and with a hoist or a lift table, it would take it up around $58,000. So those options, plus the fact that we couldn't really get our hands and eyes on one without traveling 3 or 4 hours away, we reached out to Smith Turf and Irrigation, who carries Foley grinders, and Beard Equipment, who's our John Deere dealer. They carry Bernhard grinders, and there are some of those in the area that we could look at. The UT golf facility, where they maintain the practice facility that you drive by on Alcoa Highway, and that's where they service all the reels for the research center. They invited us up. So John North from Tokwa and Jonathan Fry, the equipment manager at Tokwa, went to UT, were able to kind of put their hands on the AccuPro 633 and really liked it. It's fully enclosed. It's a cabinet with a hoist inside the cabinet. You can, one person can pull out this arm, use a winch to lift the reel up, put it in the cabinet, close it. It's a really safe model. We feel like it would do the trick and serve us well for a very long time. So that's the request at $53,523. It is, as it says there, 34% over budget. I feel like we've been really responsible with our budget numbers throughout the year, and if we purchase this, we would still be under budget year to date for approved purchased capital, not counting the $42,000 worth of used equipment we have sold.
Ed, I'll make a motion that we approve the funding request for a Foley AccuPro relief grinder in the amount of $53,523.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, vote? Oh, sorry. Sorry, discussion? No, okay. Well, remember, I'm the temporary.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Mike, did you vote on that? Braddock?
Yes, I approve.
I mean, exactly. Okay.
I think I heard him say aye.
Aye, okay. Okay, so 6-0 carries.
Great, thank you.
Actually, I said you, but who cares? I'm just pulling your leg, guys. I approve it. Thank you.
Who wants to go next? Exhaust hood and wastewater tank?
I beat you, Scott. So for the other category of the Tanasi project, that's the $1.6 total million outside of the RTC contract. Within that, we have some buckets, and we're going to update some accounting for this to make it clear as we move forward in the future. But one of those buckets is kitchen equipment, which was set at $475,000. That's why it shows that as the budget. And what we need is the curbs that go on the roof that support the hood system for the Tanasi kitchen. And in order to get the curbs, you have to go ahead and order the whole hood. So this is for 3 different hoods and 3 curbs. What we'll do is we'll go ahead and get the curbs, and they will hold the hoods until we need them in, they're looking at like the end of October, early November. We'll need the full hoods on site, but they need the curbs in the next couple of weeks. They want to make sure that they're there when they're ready to put the roof on. So the total request is 68, I can't read. Thank you.
68,497.
Yep.
Ed, I'll make a motion that we approve the funding request for Tanasi Building hood and roof curb in the amount of $68,497.
Second? I'll second it. Okay, a discussion?
Yeah, I got a question, Beth. So this is just a subcomponent of the overall?
Yes.
So did we have this subcomponent estimate before?
We did. It was all part of what made up the 475.
But, okay, 475 is a total for...
It's a total list of all kitchen equipment that we'll
Right.
need, including the hoods.
Did we have the hoods budgeted separately, though?
No, it was in there, but they're line items, so I knew the amount. So we went out, as you saw in the packet, and got 3 separate quotes for the
Right.
specific hoods.
So how do I know if we're on plan as we go along, if we're doing it piecemeal?
Because I'm going to report on it as we move forward. Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
run a balance
So this is the
moving
first
forward.
one being billed against it?
Correct, yep.
Okay, so the future one's going against it. So again, I don't know if the number that you're showing us today was what you thought it would be.
It is,
How do I know that?
because I had the original quotes.
I mean, I haven't seen it.
They're in the FAC packet, and they should be in the board stuff. So we had the original quotes, and then I got 3 bids. So they're all in line with the original.
Let me try to help. I think what Mike is, what
Joel.
Joel's asking for is it doesn't show a budget amount for this line item,
Yeah, that's what
which
I
is,
said, moving forward, we'll have more details on that, yes. We'll have to break it out moving forward, but this bid was the lowest one in the original,
Right.
what I used to build the budget for the 475.
and what you're saying is in the 475, you had a budgeted line item within the 475 of,
It was right around the 68 for
and
hoods.
all Joel's saying is,
Yeah.
what you should have done here is said, 475 is a total. This line
Yep.
item would have been X, you're asking for, is that right?
Yep, and
Okay.
moving forward, we'll make sure to have that, yes. Yep.
Okay. Then I'm going to call for a vote if there's no more discussion. Vote?
I vote yes.
That's 6-0. Thank you, Mike. Next request?
I believe the next request is for the wastewater tank at Tanasi. The request is for $33,218. That is to purchase and install the wastewater tank, which will collect all of the wastewater, kitchen water, and sanitary water from Tanasi. It is a 48 quad E1 tank. So it's a fiberglass tank, 13 feet tall with 4 E1 pumps in it. So those are the same pumps that we're installing, or the same pumps that are in the tanks that we're installing in all our remaining houses. So that certainly simplifies inventory for Public Works. And it is got a quad control panel so that it's internet connected, and if we have any issues with any of the pumps, it'll automatically notify both the manufacturer and our Public Works Department so that they can get out and manage that before there's an issue. This particular tank sits, the location, because of the way the restaurant sits on the construction site, and the final site, it sits between the 2 parking lots adjacent to a sidewalk that goes down to the golf barn, the cart barn. So it would be in a location where we do not want odors and we do not want failure because it's right there in the front. So this is the best. This was designed by the vendor or sized by the vendor, consistent with what both our plumbing and kitchen contractors would have sized and what the state requires size-wise for the restaurant and pro shop bar areas that we have.
Ed, I'll make a motion that the board approve a funding request for a wastewater tank at Tanasi, 10,500 gallons capacity, in the amount not to exceed $33,218.
I second.
Okay. Discussion? Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I sat in on the building committee meeting and had this explained, and although I'm not excited about, the huge variance, I understand it. The fact that we didn't do a great job of estimating the sewer for the restaurant based on the size of the restaurant. So I'm going to support this, but maybe lessons learned, we should have considered when we were building back bigger. We should have thought about this too.
Joel, the only issue I would say on that is neither Matt nor I were here when that was sized and budgeted, so I apologize for that. That's not a mistake that I believe we would have made had we been here.
It wasn't directed at you, Scott. If that came across the way, I apologize.
Okay. No more discussion. How about a vote?
Vote aye.
Yep. So we have 6-0. Thank you. I think there's one more request for the roof at the Welcome Center.
Sure, I'd be happy to handle that. There is a flat roof at the Welcome Center. And if it sounds like I'm being deliberate, I confused the Welcome Center and the Wellness Center. Just to be clear, it's the Welcome Center. There's a flat roof at the Welcome Center that has a membrane that is pulling off the edges of the roof. And we have performed some interior repairs related to leakage. Hence this roof replacement. What we have under consideration here is a base bid from a contractor for a 45 mil membrane replacement. There are three alternatives that are proposed with this recommended price, one of which takes the mill from 45 to 60 and adds 5 years onto the warranty. The other set of add alternates included custom roof drains to make sure that the mill and it's getting late in the day, the membrane and the roof drains fit in a custom manner. And those total about $4,000 by themselves. The upgrade from about a 45 mil to a 60 mil membrane was about $1,000. We did seek 3 bids. We received 2 of them, and this recommendation comes to you unanimous from PSAC and FAC.
Matt, my understanding is we believe, because the POA acquired this building just a few years ago, but this is the original roof from when the building was built back in 1994?
Correct.
Okay. So I'll make a motion that the board approve a funding request in the amount of $48,202 to replace the Welcome Center roof.
Second?
I second.
Discussion. Anybody have any comments or questions?
Matt, quick question. How many square feet is that roof? Do you know?
I don't know, Mike. I'd have to get back with you. I don't commit that kind of stuff to memory.
That's fair.
Any other questions? Okay, let's vote.
I vote aye.
So 6-0, that passes. And I think that was, we have other items on the agenda. I think that was our last.
Do we need to do the Kahiti Fence Committee?
Yes, that's part of the other items.
Okay.
Okay. So the board asked us to create a creative fence committee to again analyze the fence and that. John Orr gave us approval to start gathering people and do that. And we have 5 people that have applied for the committee, and we'd look to approve those today. This committee would be for just the Kahiti fence. Once that Kahiti fence is approved by the board, this committee would be dissolved. Okay. And so I need a vote to approve the 5 members of the committee.
I'll make a motion that the board approve the appointment of the 5 members that were listed in our file folder who have applied for the Kahiti Fence Committee.
I second it, but I'd ask you to read the names off for us, please.
I'm getting there.
Scott, yeah.
Okay, whoops, wait a minute, I went too far. Scott Forte, Don Blackman, Carl Hildebrand, Greg Segworth, and Michael Will.
And Steve Schneider.
No,
That got me to another hand.
and all of these people have either engineering or construction experience.
Yeah.
And with Ed as
And they
the
live in
liaison,
Kahiti.
correct?
They live in Kahiti. too.
I'm sorry, Mr. Lackey had a comment.
What's that?
And with Ed as the liaison, correct?
Yeah, I will be the liaison to that committee. So, and they have actually started work already. They were out there measuring every post and every distance between each post. which they found some dramatic differences. So we're also working with Public Works on this. So they're gathering work, and we're hoping to have an RFP out for the board and to Jeff to review, so we can set out some bids on this in the next few weeks. Can I have a vote on that? Mike?
I vote yes.
Okay, 6-0. Thank you very much. Is there anything else other?
Ed, I've got one thing I want to notify the board of. I've decided to readjust and realign some of my priorities. So effective September 18th, I will be resigning from the board and as treasurer of the POA.
Sorry to hear that, Mike, but thank you for your service, and we appreciate everything you have done in the past.
Thank
Okay?
you.
Thank you.
Mike, thanks for all that you've done.
Okay, and with that, I'm going to adjourn the meeting.
Make a motion to adjourn.